Leaders in focus. And I promised you that the governor of California would be the first to speak here, but he has another very important appointment, which does not mean that he is not coming. He's just coming a few minutes later. But we don't want to keep you waiting, so we are very flexible, and we just rearranged our schedule for the afternoon, and we have another fantastic speaker here who would have been here anyway, and I think it makes perfect sense that he's the first to speak this afternoon, because after all he really is the host not just of this event but of the entire COP23, because he's the mayor of the host city, the city of Bonn. And before he comes up on stage, let me just briefly tell you a few bits and pieces that you might be not aware of. First of all, Bonn, of course, used to be the capital of West Germany. It's an important hub to this very day for diplomacy and world affairs. It is home to 17 United Nations organizations and 170 relevant actors in climate mitigation and adaptation. Now, the Lord Mayor of Bonn himself is also the first vice president of ICLEI. That is the, as you will probably know, the leading global network of more than 1,500 cities, towns and regions committed to building a sustainable future. So he's certainly someone who is walking the talk. And now let's learn a little bit more about Bonn and its commitment to renewable energy transformation. I've just seen him. There he is. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Lord Mayor of Bonn, Ashok Alexander Sridharan.
Well, Governor Brown is not here, but Director General Amin, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Bula Vinaka, and welcome to Bonn, home to the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat and to IRENA, Innovation and Technology Center. Thank you for inviting me to give my thoughts about renewable energies and on what we could all do to advance them. I will gladly do this both as a mayor of Bonn and first vice president of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. Since IRENA came to existence in Bonn back in 2008, only a few steps from here, the agency can be credited for some significant progress that has been made in terms of general awareness, platforms, and innovation. And today will be another inspiring day for all participants. We are happy and proud to have you here. Governor Brown has just shared very passionately with us California's amazing low-emission and high-performance success story. Indeed, he came to the floor, rocked the floor for 20 minutes, and then left for his next meeting, where I think he's still. And so the ground is paved for my thoughts about the role of cities and regions for the implementation of the Paris Agreement and the transformation to a low-emission and renewable energy future. Cities and regions are born frontrunners and experts when it comes to collaboration, whether cross-sectoral, cross-structural, or cross-boundary. They showcase that low-carbon solutions, energy efficiency, and the increased use of renewable energies are beneficial in multiple ways: for a better climate future, for the well-being of citizens, and from an economic perspective. At home, cities and regions are advancing renewable energy solutions in many ways, holding themselves accountable, reporting on their commitments, and local action. The Global Covenant of Mayors or Under2 Coalition are examples for successful platforms. In my view, accountability is a precondition to optimize future strategies, including the next phase of the national determined contributions. A few examples might illustrate some measures on the ground that can be implemented by cities and regions. Many cities are masters of their resource decisions. They manage their own energy supply, water management, and public transport, which is a huge asset in favor of renewable energies. In Bonn, we have completed the transformation of our power plant from coal to steam, fed by the neighboring waste incinerator and achieving a 90% efficiency. The energy mix of our public utilities comprises almost 70% renewables. District heating is advanced because of its many benefits. Brilliant examples for innovative energy concepts are today's venue. The Post Tower is one of our really very famous and very green buildings, as well as our World Conference Center in Bonn, the Bula Zone. Mobility-wise, we have opted for e-mobility by subsequently buying e-buses and expanding our network of charging stations in collaboration with neighboring energy providers. As we are pushing our energy mix towards renewables step by step, we are hoping to close the remaining gap by 2030, when we will hopefully have a fleet of 100% e-buses run by 100% renewable energy. We are on a good path, and we will continue this path in Bonn, also counting on ownership and buy-in options for our citizens, our businesses, and institutions as reliable partners. This is why these stakeholders are part of the advisory board for the implementation of our integrated climate protection concept. After all, the success story of renewable energies is a success story of people, of decentralization, of alliances and collaboration. And who is better living these models than cities and regions? The level that can best reach out and build a bridge to people and to stakeholders. In terms of commitment and support for renewable energies, cities and regions are uniting for climate and a sustainable energy future. Thank you for your attention and all my best wishes for your efforts towards energy efficiency. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Video. Wow, you can stay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard this before today. Change needs leadership, and leadership in the corporate world starts in the boardroom. And that is why the title of our next session is called Paradigm Shift in the Boardroom, the Corporate Phase of the Energy Transformation. I also mentioned earlier, and you know that as well as I do, that business needs to be profitable. That means business leaders need to make sure that their strategies enable for growth, not just in the short term, in the long term, hopefully, being sustainable. And we already heard that renewable energy and the transformation to renewable energy can actually open up new business opportunities and boost business. The thing is, people don't like change. And any major social political change certainly needs the support of the private sector. And we will have some representatives of the private sector here on the stage in just a moment. Global energy transformation is no exception to that very rule. From investors to consumers, they all need to be on board. I'll just give you one example. In order to decarbonize the energy sector, we need to invest about $900 billion every year from now to the year 2050. 85% of that investment has to come from the private sector. That is quite a tall order, but as you will hear from the gentlemen and ladies that I call up on the stage, it is doable, at least you can have a go. So, I haven't seen them yet. I hope they're in this room. I'm just going to announce their names and ask them to come up on the stage and take a seat of their choice. I will just take this one, and you can always give them a warm welcome as they move up here. First of all, I would like to welcome Thomas Duvaux, Head of Strategy at Mobisol, German business developing solar energy systems for Africa and the developing world. Good to have you with us. Please take a seat. I also would like to call up onto the stage Maxine Gavi, Group Senior Vice President, Program Director for Microgrids at ABB, which is based in Switzerland, as far as I understand. Correct. Good. Good to have you here. Then a very warm welcome to Thierry Lepergue, Executive Vice President at French multinational electric utility company ENGIE. That's right. You never know with these abbreviations. Good to have you. And last but not least, Michelle Patrons, Director of Sustainability Policy at Microsoft. A very warm welcome to you as well. Good to have you here. Please take a seat. And then last but not least, we have someone who basically lays the foundation for this session, someone who can give us a bit of food for thought, and that will be Ernesto Ciora, Head of Innovation and Sustainability at Italian multinational manufacturer and distributor of electricity and gas. Couldn't be any shorter. Enel, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you would like to give a short introduction and give us your thoughts, yes? Oh, you need a click. Do we have?
We need a clicker.
Ah, there it is. There it is. There it is. Well hidden from your side.
Hidden.
There we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi to everybody. I hope that the coffee was enough. I will try to give you another portion of coffee with my speech. You know that innovation is like a strong force, but unfortunately, we can be Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader. No? Because the innovation is a strong force, but you can be. Who had the Nokia before? Please raise the hand. Nokia mobile phone. Nokia was a global leader. Unfortunately, due to innovation, they closed the company. Who used the Polaroid before? Polaroid? No, another global leader. Unfortunately, they went to bankrupt. And you know 3M, no? No, sorry, this is a good company. But you know another company that is called Kodak. Do you know Kodak? They have invented, who used Kodak before? They have invented the digital image. They went to bankrupt due to the digital image. So, innovation has a dark side of the force. It can kill everything. It can kill companies, sectors, and I suppose that unfortunately will kill this sector too, energy and utilities. The sector will be killed because the disruption has not already appeared, but it's going to appear. And as it happens with a very strong force, it has the dark side that can kill everybody, but people cannot understand that there is this strong force. And when it appears, people say a lot of stupid things. No, because the internet will catastrophically collapse in 1996. It's a guru. Eh? There is no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. No? In some cases, producing electricity by solar panels releases more greenhouse gases than producing electricity by gas or even coal. Great applause to do the applause, no? To the Low Tech magazine in 2008, with this article written by serious scientists explaining to us that renewable source of energy was quite worse than coal. That is great, obviously. So, in some cases, people say lies. Simply say lies because they are paid to say lies. This is, unfortunately, something that you can manage, because you can make another research and you can say, hey, these are lies. You are saying stupid things. No, you are a liar. But the problem, lies, everybody can say lies. What is the truth? But we can talk about it after. But unfortunately, the real problem is that a lot of people don't say lies because they want to say lies. They say lies because they can't say the truth. I am going to demonstrate to you. Let's do a very fast exercise. Please do with me. Say loud the result of a very simple sum. Very simple. What is the total? Please say loud. Again, loud.
1,040.
You are doing great. Okay, now?
2,040.
Now?
2,070.
Now?
3,070.
Now?
3,090.
Now?
4,090.
Now?
5,000.
5,000, 5,000, 5,000. Great. Who said 5,000? Please say the truth. I did this. Great people, talented people usually say 5,000. Please, he said 5,000 is doing this, but don't do this. Do this. Okay, say the truth. Don't do this, like Dr. Strangelove. Okay, a lot of people say 5,000. They don't want to say a lie. They don't want to say a bad thing. They are honest people, but they said 5,000. I did. When I seen this game proposed to me by Professor Edward de Bono, the inventor of lateral thinking, I said 5,000. And I have involved in this game a lot of talented people, very famous professors, entrepreneurs. They said 5,000. But the real result is 4,100. Why could it happen? Because I've asked your brain to follow a dominant rule. What is the dominant rule? Add 1,000. I have asked your brain to add 1,000 4 times, and in 10 seconds, I have cancelled 30 years of mathematics. You studied mathematics at least more or less for 30 years, no? You are 15 years old, so probably you studied just for 10 years, but on average year, you studied for 30 years mathematics. But you did this wrong. It's incredible, just a very simple sum. If you ask a 7-year-old guy, he can do it good. Not wrong. Why could it happen? Because the 7-year-old guy, he does it slowly. So he does 40, 30, 90, 100. 4,000, 100. You go fast. You learn rules, you apply your rules. You learn rules, you apply rules. How many rules did you learn in the last 10 years in your company? You must do this, 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 and this. You mustn't do this, 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 and this. You learn a lot of rules. And after, your vision of the reality is limited. That's why you could say stupid things. And me, I am very famous for that. Because you don't know what is the right perspective. Because you are limiting yourself. You are honest. Not like the people we have written about before, saying lies because they were paid. But saying lies because you don't know what is the truth. So we need people from other sectors to help us because they don't know the rules of the sector that we have. We know what we have to do, what we must avoid. They don't know anything. They enter in this sector and they can kill all the rules because they don't know them. So they don't respect the rules, they don't follow the rules, they can change everything. They arrive, they don't know that a driver must have the license, and they found Uber. They don't know that an hotel owner must have the license to rent the homes, and they found Airbnb. This happens because our knowledge generates paradigms, and they limit ourselves. The paradigms. I give you some example of paradigms in our sector. Does a huge electrified area need its own distribution grid? Probably you will say yes. This is a paradigm. Does exist an energy storage solution which is enough for a big factory? Probably you would say no. But technology is killing those paradigms. And can a solar and wind shares represent in the future half of the cumulative installed capacity? A lot of people could say it's impossible. But unfortunately for them, it's possible. Because in 2040, all the forecasts that I did, I've been working in innovation for 20 years, I've always did wrong forecasts. Do you know why? Because everything that I was forecasting happened 10 years before. So if it's written 2040, probably it will happen in 2030. Because technology goes faster than I and we can imagine. Can the cost of lithium batteries keep falling at a significant rate? Probably yes. We can forecast $73 per kilowatt hour by 2030. I'm sure, regarding the figure, 73. I'm not sure regarding the year. No? Because probably this year will be 2020, not 2030. But okay, it will be at $73 per kilowatt. Are there any distributed energy storage solution already available? How the operators do stabilize the grid? How do? They turn on plants, fossil fuel plants. But do you know that Vodafone can do this business in Northern Europe? They have already installed 500,000 batteries in their telco networks. They could do this business, killing our business model. So companies like us, like Engie, like Enel, could not do this business because other companies like Vodafone have already installed a lot of batteries that will increase in the future. They will do this business. We have already 13.5 gigawatts of batteries already today in Europe in the BTS of a telco network. We have already 15 gigawatts of batteries in the stores. Even the hospitals can make competition against us. You couldn't imagine. So what is the role of our business? Generation will be distributed, so we will not do generation. It vanishes. Distribution will be localized, decentralized. So what is the role of a company like us? Now we are making business stabilizing the grids. Someone else will do. Or we, if we kill ourselves. To disrupt or being disrupted? This is the question. Quoting Hamlet, no? Retail. Now we sell energy, but we will not sell energy because you will produce energy at home in your company. Why should you buy energy from us? So the whole value chain could vanish. Can you imagine a world where anything is connected but energy self-sufficient? This is another perspective. Colleagues from Moby Solar will explain. Not having any generation aside, but having each device with its own ability to produce the energy that it needs. It's a provocation, but the future is always a provocation that technology enables. I give you some examples and I'm going to close. Can infrasonic and ultrasonic microphones that people have projected and planned to avoid the terrorists dig and enter into Israel can be used to better manage wind and hydro turbines? This is a paradigm. Two different words, microphones and turbines. What is the link? No links. What we have done, we have used a technology with microphones, and we have heard some sounds that are predictive of a failure of the turbine. So we have linked these very isolated two words. Now we have developed a big data analysis, developing a predictive maintenance model applied to wind turbines and to hydro turbines, starting from microphones that in Israel are used to identify suspicious sounds from potential terrorists. So linking different things. This is what Steve Jobs called connecting the dots. This is the future of a sustainable innovation in this sector. Having ideas, projects, plans, proposals, technologies from other areas, not from this sector. We know everything about this sector. We are limited. Because in 10 seconds, I cancel 30 years of mathematics of yours. So you can imagine in 30 years of your sector, how much we are limited, knowing everything regarding our sector, not knowing everything regarding those technologies. That's why we need startups. We need entrepreneurs. We need visionaries. We need people from other sectors to work with them and to break our mental constraints, what we call paradigms. Can communication technologies help increasing safety? We have found new solutions in communication technology, asking people with an international platform called Innocentive, and now people who go into our tunnels, hydro tunnels, they have a communication way, a communication technology that enables them to work with us. It didn't exist before. We have took this, getting ideas from a website called Innocentive. Consulting companies, providers, vendors didn't help us to let our people communicate with our people in the tunnels before, down in dams tunnels. So, is it possible to, I'm going to address another paradigm, to hybridize the geothermal energy with photovoltaic and with concentrated solar power? We asked MIT, hey, is it possible? After 3 months, they came back with an invoice saying no. So we were a little bit disappointed, no? We were a little bit disappointed because usually we pay some invoices to have some solutions. They say no because it's due to this, this, and this. So they helped us because we have understood why it was not impossible and why it's quite better not to ask scientists regarding something that doesn't exist. So we have launched some challenges into our ecosystems. We have found a startup from Israel, another one from United States. And after that, MIT say no, we did. We did in the United States. And they have asked us if they can come to check how it was possible that some Italian people did this in the United States, even if MIT said it was not possible. And we did. In the Fallon, the name of the town is Fallon, where there is the Top Gun base. There is nothing else than the Top Gun base and this very big plant combining the energy of the earth with the energy of the sun. And they said it was impossible. Why? We have transformed the paradigms, why it's impossible, into challenges, asking people who didn't know that it was impossible. Because as Einstein said, if the people say it's impossible, please call some people who don't know that is impossible, and they will make it possible. This is what we did. Just asking people who were ignorant regarding this limitation, these paradigms. That's why we need to nurture our people with people from outside. Is it possible to supply energy to remote areas and small islands without any diesel generator? Only renewables. We did. Cerro Pabellon, 5,000 meters below the sea in Chile, with a photovoltaic, traditional lion storage, and hydrogen storage. A new innovative technology coming from France, from a startup, Italian and French startup, and we use this technology, and now when we have an excess of production, we produce hydrogen, and when we need energy, we transform hydrogen into energy. So we did this zero-emission grid, 5,000 meters below the sea in Chile, starting from a paradigm. It's impossible. We did. Because we are doing the same in another island. But can a car be used to stabilize the grid? So this is how people look at a car. This is a car for you. This is an electric car for us. A battery with wheels. This is a battery with wheels. Because for us, it's a battery. How many hours do you use a battery? A car, sorry, every day. How many hours?
Give us an example.
How many hours do you use your car?
Say 1, 2, 3, then
Yeah.
people will raise their hands.
Yeah. But 1, 2, 3? No? Okay. How many hours do you use your car every day?
I don't drive.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Okay. 1 hour, 2 hours. Okay? 1 hour, 1 hour. For the other 23 hours, your battery can be a stabilizer of the grid. What we are doing, I know I'm going to end, what we are doing in Denmark, we are doing in England, Germany, and France is when you don't use your car, you plug in your car, and we aggregate many cars, and we stabilize the grids. Not producing new batteries, not producing more CO2 to produce more batteries. We use existing batteries and try to imagine the future. Only renewables powering the world and billions of electric cars stabilizing the world. When you don't use these cars and when you don't use the batteries into the telco grids, or when you don't use the batteries who already are in supermarkets or in other places, you use the 5% of those batteries to stabilize the grid. You can do it in 1 second. How long will it take today to stabilize the grid to a fossil fuel plant? Minutes, hours to turn it on. But you can get energy from a battery in 1 second. And the battery can absorb the energy when there is an overflow of energy into the system that a traditional plant can't do. So the battery is quite better, more effective, more innovative, and more useful than the fossil fuel solution. So going back to our paradigms, can you imagine an electrified area without grids? Can you imagine a storage solution able to provide enough energy to a factory? I think that whatever you think, if you can imagine it, it can happen. And so in the future, unfortunately, if we don't do innovation, no party. There will not be the companies that you already know. If we don't innovate, we die. That's why we have linked innovation and sustainability. I am head of innovability, Chief Innovability Officer. Mixing innovation and sustainability, because if we don't innovate, we die. No innovation, no party is quite more beautiful than me, I know. And that's why I used him instead of my photo. But what is very important, this is the last slide. I know I use more time than I had, but it's normal. If you are a rebel, you cannot always follow all the rules. It always seems impossible until it's done. It happens that people say, it's impossible, it's impossible, it's impossible. You are saying stupid things. If people say it to you, looks at you, and they say you are saying stupid things, you have a chance. If people say to you, oh, this is smart, oh, you are doing very well, oh, you are a very intelligent guy, probably you are saying a lot of useless things that the world doesn't need. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Take a seat. Okay, Ernesto, you set the scene beautifully, and allow me not to ask you a follow-up question, because I want to make sure that the other panelists do get a word in, but do feel free to intervene, and certainly in the final round, I'll include you as well. Because I would like to start with Thierry. You have a very, very interesting biography, because you actually founded Solaire Direct. That was in 2006, a solar power company, which is now operating across like 4 continents. And 2 years ago, in 2015, the ENGIE Group acquired that company that you founded, and very recently you were appointed Executive Vice President in charge of innovation. Of course, ENGIE is a very, very big independent power producer in the world, and it's quite interesting. I mean, why would such a big, important, huge power company decide to hire you and leave you in charge of innovation?
Thanks for asking the question. I think it doesn't happen in many industries, and this industry, at least some people know that something drastic is happening, and this is what Isabelle Cocher realized 2 years ago when we first met. We met at a conference, we were in the same panel, on a conference on 100% renewables in France. By the way, the report that was supposed to back that up had been lost, so the minister introduced something which was a non-report, but what came out very instantly is that Isabelle Cocher, who was just about to become CEO of ENGIE, and I shared the same vision that solar and renewables would change the business model forever. And so the acquisition took place, and a year and a half ago, Isabelle took over as CEO and asked me to join the executive committee, which was, to be honest, a surprise. Even though what Isabelle Cocher said is I'm intent on bringing fundamental transformation in what is a 200-year-old company, which is still, to be very frank, one of the largest emitters in the world, with close to 100 gigawatts of generation present in 70 countries. And the way she approached it was to say, I wanted to do it from a cultural standpoint and from a business standpoint. So from a cultural standpoint, we launched an initiative which we call NGFab. Actually, it's a place which is inside Paris, away from the corporate borders, much closer to Google. Actually, we're just 20 meters from the Google office in central Paris. And this is where she decided, and we decided that we would map out the future, or not the future for the whole group, that would be a bit pretentious, but the game changers, the disruptors. And here, I'd like to say that when you're a very large company with 150,000 people, 80 billion euros in assets, there's so much that you can do to transform that. Let's be very, very clear. And what Isabelle says is that, in the corporate world, we used to have 5-year plans. That was like not only in the corporate world, and that no longer works because those 5-year plans are always disrupted. And what we need to have is a 5-week plan or something, or extremely short plan, which doesn't mean that there's no transformation to be, not 5-week, but very short term. And short term means including M&A, doing M&A, selling, and we've sold close to 15 billion euros in coal, gas, and some other assets in the last oil in the last 2 years, and bought a number of energy services companies. That's, I'd say, the mainstream of the business. And then imagine those game changers. Those absolute game changers, so the horizon is also long-term. Actually, what happens, and right now in this corporate world is, as I was presented by some of the previous speakers, the future is coming back to the present. And that's, for instance, competitive renewables. Well, competitive renewables is more than present. The game is over. I mean, today, solar and wind are 20, 30, 60, 80% cheaper than conventional energy sources, everything. That is the case today.
Can I just ask two very brief follow-ups by what you just said? When you said your office in Paris is very close to Google, I mean, are there any synergies planned, or are you just maybe meeting by chance for coffee in the same canteen next door? Because in terms of innovation, that probably would be quite practical. And if you say not 5-year plans, but 5-week plans, how do you go about investing that?
No, 5-week plan is part of the plan, and then there's the long-term plan, and we're part of the long-term plan. So, by the way, yes, we've worked with Google and invited them, and Google told them that they were an old state company that had problems hiring people in the Silicon Valley, because nobody wants to join an old company that is already worth 600 billion.
It's Microsoft that pitches them probably, or sort of snatches them away.
It looks like their innovation elsewhere, and what we heard from Lejang earlier shows that major startups are being developed, and that's the world that we're in. I'll just finish by saying what is at stake today for a large company like ENGIE is both to execute a transformation plan which has its challenges, including from a cultural standpoint, and you don't, to be very frank, transform everyone into an entrepreneur immediately. And at the same time, it's mapping the future of those large-scale future businesses. And I'm quite pleased to say that this message is now being transformed, because 2 days ago there was a big announcement. Not everyone heard it, but ENGIE announced the launch of a major hydrogen business unit, and together with a joint program with Total. And while this has not made the headlines because we didn't give details, this is an absolute game changer. We're talking something that is going to replace oil and gas, and that people at the very top at Total are now convinced of. Obviously, if you quote them on that, they won't necessarily say that, but it's what this announcement of 2 days ago means. So in a nutshell, this idea that you can have massive disruptions is not just some fancy thing that happens in small labs. It's not just a side thing with small innovations on the side. It's something core business. And while it is forecast, in the beginning, the vision is, hey, this is for the next 15 years. The next 15 years are coming right now. So that's where it's becoming fun.
All right, this is where I would like to include Michelle, because we were talking about Silicon Valley just very briefly, and of course you represent Microsoft here, and Microsoft being among those many companies, more and more of those actually, which is a good thing, committed to sourcing its power from 100% renewables, and you also are a part of the RE100 as well as REBA, which is Renewable Energy Buyers Alliances, all of them initiatives that are driving renewables, and that also help corporates to actually meet demand for renewable energy. Why are you doing this to that extent? And how do you want to go about reaching renewable energy by 100%?
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to thank Ernesto for that warm introduction, because I feel really comfortable here as an outside industry now. So most people don't think about Microsoft when they think about energy. It's increasingly fundamental to our business. Right? We are consuming more and more energy as we build more and more data centers around the world to power the modern economy. And so we've set ambitious targets, near-term targets, 50% by the end of next year, 60% by the early 2020s, and to keep going from there, our North Star is our 100%, so we're happy to be, I'm really proud to be a member of RE100. And it's multifaceted, our drivers. Our drivers are obviously, we want to make sure we're minimizing our impact as we consume more resources, but we have a really tough CFO, and it has to pencil out. And so the costs are important to us, and the long-term predictability is really important to us. And so for us, it's not just about buying the green electrons and buying them in a cost-effective way. We also want to make the broader grid greener and the broader grid more resilient. So we're also investing in innovative technologies. What's interesting about a data center is that you have to run it 24/7. And so resilience is critical, and we are showing and proving ways that renewables can be resilient. For every data center, for every megawatt we pull from the grid, we have a megawatt of batteries, and we have a megawatt of backup gen. So we're increasingly using backup storage, not just batteries, and we're investing in that, and we have a number of pilots around the world on that. The other thing that was really interesting, we announced a new deal recently in Ireland to power a data center with wind, and that was a partnership with General Electric, and they're actually putting digital storage in the turbines that are powering the project. And so really taking that to the next level. Last week, we announced a new project. We're actually doing a fuel cell powered data center where you inject right now natural gas directly into the fuel cell, directly into the building. The hope is once hydrogen comes around, you could also inject that too. For us, it's not just about technology though. We're trying to innovate how you purchase energy and how you can more easily access it. And creating new relationships with utilities. So one of the things we just did, which was really exciting and innovative, was in Wyoming. Wyoming is a state in the United States. It's a coal-rich state. It's not exactly the first place you think of with renewables. We have a large data center there. And so in order to bring wind online, we're bringing 250 megawatts, so a lot of wind, adjacent to our data center. The local utility needed to build a peaker plant. We didn't want them building a coal peaker plant. We didn't want them increasing the prices of the local customers. So we thought creatively. And we actually realized that we had this backup generation. We weren't utilizing it. And so why couldn't we provide that generation available to the local community, use that when they needed the wind power, and basically provide them for high peak hours. And so instead of just doing it for diesel, which is normally how we had done it on backup gens, we catalyzed the market for high efficiency natural gas, fast starting, and put that on our backup generators. So we're doing two-way flows now in order to bring wind online in Wyoming. So it's really exciting. The last piece I want to talk about is what we're doing with our customers. So we're just not just about our energy demand, but it's helping our customers that are active throughout the energy sector. And Ernesto alluded on this. We have a really exciting project going on in Norway with our partner Agder Energy, and it's an autonomous grid. We have laid software on top of the grid. You have predictive analytics, which are capturing the data and understand what's happening with demand in real time. You have, on the back end, an understanding of what assets are available to dispatch, if it's electric vehicles, if it's solar panels, and being able to balance in real time this higher penetration. It's reduced the need for the utility to have to invest in additional substations, and it's increased the the integration, and you can decide what you optimize for. Do you optimize for cost? Do you optimize for carbon? So there's a lot of excitement happening in space, and Microsoft is really, really proud to be at the center of that.
I can hear the excitement, and these are some great examples you mentioned. Just briefly, I mean, when we talk about renewable energy, 100% of that, where are we at the moment in terms of what Microsoft wants to achieve, offering its services with 100% renewable energy? Are we talking, your goal, is it still 10 years from now? Are you very close to it?
So we have a goal that is to get to 50% by the end of next year, and I can happily say that we are very much on track to hitting that goal when we've set that target, and 60% by 2020, and to keep going from there. The thing to remember, just to understand the scale of Microsoft's demand, right now we consume as much as a small US state. So for those of you that are familiar with the United States, you can say it's the state of Vermont, you could say it's the state of Alaska. That's a lot of energy. If we continue to grow and cloud computing continues to grow at the scale that people are anticipating, we could consume as much energy as a medium-sized economy. So it's not just that we are hitting these ever-increasing goals, but our base is expanding at an exponential fashion.
All right. Maxine, good to have you here, representing ABB, and of course that's a leading technology provider that is also embracing renewable energy and offers various solutions in that direction. There was a discussion beforehand and we couldn't agree on it. Certainly I didn't get the latest. Is it mini-grids or microgrids?
Microgrids.
We talk about microgrids. Okay, all the mini will be crossed. It's essentially the same, but microgrids is the term that we're talking about here, which is okay. And that is actually where you're involved in microgrids. When and why did ABB decide to embark on this path, and what do you personally bring to it in terms of vision?
Well, thank you for that question. So, as you said, everybody knows ABB is a pioneering technology company, and really one of the key drivers that we have is technology development for a sustainable future. And over the last decade, we have invested quite a bit in renewable technology to really help enable the cost effectiveness of renewable technology for further development. We've also been doing microgrids for the last 25 years. And just to be clear, what our definition of microgrid is, whether you call it a micro or a mini grid, it's not size relevant per se. Essentially, a microgrid is where you have generation at the point of consumption, and it's always available. And so with microgrids, where we started out about 25 years ago, we were integrating storage and wind into a system with diesel backup generators for remote locations, et cetera, mostly for critical load application across the globe, whether it be military, scientific sites, also some remote communities, larger communities. And what we started realizing about 3 years ago was that, actually earlier than that, is that we had all the key elements for a microgrid, and especially since we had been investing in renewables and help reducing the overall cost, that now that we could see in the industry also that renewables would make microgrids much more cost effective and much more economically viable, whereas before you couldn't really deploy them in masses because they were still not cost effective. And so what we decided to do was we said this is a market segment that we believe will grow, and how do we want to play in it. But we also really felt that it's not only a market segment where we wanted to grow, but we also wanted to focus on providing resilient and cost-effective access to power everywhere. And the market for microgrid 3 years ago was in its infancy. Today, it's barely a toddler. So it still has a lot of room to grow. My background is solar, and this reminds me of my early solar days and what we were going through.
Look where that's gone to.
I mean, and so the good news is I've been here before. It's deja vu, and I know there's going to be success and there's going to be a market. And we had all the key elements. But what we did was, since it wasn't really about technology innovation, because we already had the technology, and what we really focused on was how do we help enable the market, especially as a large company. how can we really help this market grow, and how do we deploy microgrids not only for resilience in developed markets, but also for purely access to power in markets when there is no grid for village electrification, et cetera. So what we really focused on was productization. Productization, modularization, and plug and play. And we really believe that this is a market, if it's to be enabled, the system, the solutions have to be easy to deploy. You have to be able to deploy them fast. They have to be easy to maintain. And they have to be, of course, safe and reliable. And if we do that, we're reducing the risk for the financial community. If you have cookie-cutter solutions that are repeatable, it actually helps with the deployment of the microgrids. And frankly, we felt very strongly that we want to do good, but when you do good for profit and there's a business model, it happens so much faster. And it's okay to do pilots where you don't really have a business model, where there's return on investment, but even though we're not a developer, but we know our customers, the developers, they have to, when they do their analysis, they have to make money on this project. Sure. And once they start seeing the business models and they see the payback, then this will really take off, in our opinion. So that was our vision for the microgrid and why we decided to really focus on the productization and really help enable the market. And that's what we continue with. And we focus, as I mentioned, focus on resiliency in developed markets. And we also focused on purely providing access to power and reducing the diesel consumption whenever, through technology, through productization, and enablement of cost-effective technology.
You can start here in Germany, certainly, with reducing diesel consumption. If you have some really good ideas how we can achieve that here, that will be good. You just said that microgrids right now have sort of reached the toddler stage. Again, in terms of time frame, I mean, you're still, full of energy. Do you think that the development of microgrids really to come to its full fruition and what you aim to achieve, are we talking about, again, 10, 20 years? Because at COP23, certainly when we talk about bringing global warming to well below 2 degrees, you feel that time is of the essence, and so what time frame are we talking about here?
Look, there are a number of elements. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of technologies here, we will continue to see the cost of renewables, and especially solar, which will play a huge role in this, continue to go down. And Ernesto has already hit on this. Storage is a key component for microgrids. And as the cost of storage and batteries go down significantly, that'll even further enable microgrids. So where we are and how fast this will be deployed, I think as they become more economically viable, this will take off within the next, I would say, 2 to 3 years really fast. Mm-hmm. Now, the biggest hurdle for enabling microgrids is actually policy and business model. And policy, as long as the utilities aren't allowed to reinvent themselves in developed world, and as long as in developing world, there isn't a clear policy where you're trying to provide access to electricity where it doesn't exist today, if there isn't a clear policy, then the investment won't be done, right? For example, one of the single biggest questions, if there is no grid today, and I go build, if I were a developer and went and built a microgrid, what happens when the grid gets there 5, 10 years from now? And if there isn't a policy in place, the investor, the developer will not want to invest. So I'd like to think we can bring all of this together and look at it as an ecosystem as opposed to just technology or products or development. Really bring it together, and I think this is where it's really, really important to have that public-private partnership and have that active dialogue. And it's, as I said, not about technology, but about enablement and taking all the different elements of economic policy and all of that, bring it together. I'd like to think that by 2020, we'll be sitting here and we'll be talking about microgrids the way we talk about solar. That would be awesome.
So the energy transformation successfully will not work in silos, and that brings me straight to Thomas, and you were nodding, and at one point about public-private partnerships, I sort of thought you were not so completely sure, but I know that Mobisol, you've installed almost 90,000 solar home systems in Tanzania, in Rwanda, very, very active in Africa, but also in other developing nations. We heard this morning on the first panel that 640 million people in Africa are without access to decent energy sources. Now, this is something that obviously you're working very actively against. And that in a way that it's not just that they have access to energy, but it's solar energy sources, and that in an affordable way, which is obviously very important. Perhaps you can share with us very briefly how this business model actually works. How do you go about it?
I was thinking when you said, Maxine, the ecosystem to me is the 640 million Africans who don't have any energy. So it's not a question of energy transition from something which is carbonized to decarbonized. It's no energy at all. It's kerosene lights, and if you're very rich, it's a diesel generator. But both alternatives are not good quality of life. So bringing solar to Africa, I mean, it's so trivial. Of course it does work. And if I think of SDG 7, 2030, giving access to energy universally to everybody, we know that there's, intrinsically with people from Enel and Engie saying, it's not going to be on-grid only. That's something which is pretty different from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we would not have listened to that. So I think the mix of on-grid, microgrid, mini-grid, and what we do, which is completely off-grid, installing a solar panel on a roof, a battery in a house, bringing a TV, a radio, recharging mobile phones, all the technology we need to achieve SDG 7 in Africa is on the table. We do not need another 5 rounds of innovation. In terms of costs, we can electrify a household for $500. So you have 100 million households in Africa who don't have electricity. Multiplied by 500, we're talking 50 billion. 50 billion in 13 years to electrify a continent. To me, that seems to be the best development aid ever. Give electricity to every African household, and something will happen that has not been remotely achieved by any type of development aid. And I see a lot of people nodding in the room, and the few Africans we have in the room, you know better than anybody else. Give kilowatt hours to people, and they will make more business with a kilowatt hour they have than any of us coming from the Western world will ever do. And I think the fact that, there's this perfect storm coming together, a technology which is available. Companies like Mobisol or Engie just bought one of our competitors, Phoenix. We developed for the last 5 or 6 years in a very rapid prototyping, innovation, startup mentality, how to go about to electrify people in off-grid areas, because my customers know the grid will never come. So the grid will come around cities, the grid will come to areas with a lot of industrial load, but the typical customer of Mobisol will never have the problem of, I choose the grid or a solar system, simply because grids, and you know it better than I do, grids is very expensive. Grids is anything but trivial to run. And if I look at SDG 2030, and if I look at the typical way that my customers living, you will not bring the grid to most African households. So it must be a combination of on-grid, mini-grid, and off-grid. And why I was shaking my head is, the technology is there, the strategy is on the table. We have a roadmap. Mobisol is not going to do it alone, but we can, together with our peers, electrify everybody in 15 years. It's absolutely feasible with the help of people like, Engie, Enel, and governments maybe. So maybe we can put something together. So I'm waiting for this, who needs to sit at the table to actually make it happen? Because at the level of a company, I can grow at 100% a year, which we currently do, which is great, but, even until 2030, it's not going to be good enough. So how can we actually put the people who do the one part of the P, the public, who is the rational planner at the level of a government who will be the first to say, look, come into my country, we'll find the money, and we will see the change in development, the change in growth, the change of empowerment of people if you all give people a decent access to energy. And that's my hope for the future. And the future should start at this COP and in the other corporate boardrooms we have the chance to enter.
I mean, who would you need as partners in order to get the right people to the table and get that move done?
I think most of the people we need to actually come up with a large pilot project which would prove to the world that we can do, say, 1% of the African population in a specific area. You know, the people are here. Finance is not the problem, I think, for these things. Implementation, it's a matter of willingness. And you know, people like Adnan are much better placed to put these people around the table than I am, because I'm a small startup. Yes, we have 1,000 people. We grew from 5 people to 1,000. But you know, in the end, the ABBs and the NL and the NG of the world together with people who have a political clout can make that happen. And we'll put our technology to the disposition of a broader initiative.
Before I ask my last question, I promised earlier that sessions, when time allows, will include questions from you. So you would just have to give me a very clear sign, because we do have a little bit of time. I do still have questions, but just that you know. So if you raise your hand and keep it up there until I see it, then I can include you in this round. And in the meantime, I would like to go back to Thierry and Ernesto. No, you can finish whatever you were saying. It's didn't want to interrupt, but of course, I mean, you're representing big energy companies, and you're both very much at the forefront of the energy transition. What opportunities in terms of business do you see by embracing renewables, by going forward with the energy transformation? What sort of business models and opportunities do you see for your company, respectively? Maybe starting with you, Thierry.
I think there is a misunderstanding that people, you talk about energy companies and mobility companies. I'm certain of one thing, is that the energy is a commodity, and it's not going to be sold or valued the way it was in the future, in the past. And I think of one major use, which is mobility. Today we see the convergence, massive convergence of mobility, and Ernesto, by the way, showed us a few elements of that.
Batteries and wheels, yeah.
And that's the concept of usage, of service. Energy is essential, it's like blood, etc., but it's of no use in itself if you don't have the right concept of usage behind it. So, to be very frank, my perception is that companies that view themselves as energy companies generating energy and distributing it should change fast. Just, by the way, car companies that view their business model of manufacturing cars and selling them to people should change very, very fast. Now, the good thing is that all these things is merging, and today you have the emergence of services. I'd just like to mention, and it's a Chinese example again. It's a company called Geely. Geely is a Chinese manufacturer. Actually, they're the owner of Volvo, and they launched a service in 6 months ago, which is called Cao Cao, which is in just 6 months, it's gone up to 15 cities and 13,000 cars. They have the next Uber, generation of Uber. It's all electric cars with their own drivers, which will shift to autonomous driving whenever that comes, which is quite soon. And they have a seamless energy and mobility service, which is basically giving people the opportunity to move around the city with something completely clean at a fraction of the price. Is this an energy company? Is this a mobility company? I don't know. I'm only sure, the only thing I'm sure is that this model is very successful already in 15 Chinese cities, and that it's probably going to come here very soon and establish itself. So we should really try to avoid and look beyond these categories of energy companies and mobility and the rest, and see what is at stake, which it could include as well the building, what you're doing with the building, which means comfort and productivity and other things. And let's forget about energy.
But I mean, that all seems very logical, but of course this is really a fundamental change, not just for the players involved, but also for consumers, for the outside world, to actually grasp and go along with it. I mean, going by what Thierry just said, and Ernesto, but by your keynote at the beginning, I mean, what then is NL, if not an energy company? How would you define yourself then?
We are a global network company. Because if you don't have digital grids, you cannot dispatch in a efficient way the renewables. So you need a two-way digital grid that enables you to use the renewables. That's why, starting from this perspective, network company, we have launched a NewCo, a startup, 1.5 years ago. The name of this startup is LL Open Fiber. We are using electric grids to provide ultra broadband fiber optics connections, and the value of this startup now is more or less 5 billion. Because we have already won tenders for 5 billion, and we are going to duplicate, copying ourselves this business in South America and in other countries where we are. Because in the future, even the pill that you ingest will be connected. Because even the pill must know when it has to release itself in our stomach. So everything will be connected, and the connection needs connection, ultra fiber optic connections, and energy. That's why the two are linked. Otherwise, I agree with him, you don't need grid. But if you have this power, and I'm going to give you another example, no? Can I stand up? Because, okay, I prefer to stand up.
As long as you stay over there,
just
so
one
I can
minute,
keep an eye on you.
1 minute. I don't know if you know the Marsala wine. The Marsala wine is very good, it's tasty, it's sweet. You can drink it after lunch or after dinner. It's produced in Marsala, without fantasy. We call them Marsala. And it's 20% of alcohol. Okay? On the other side, we have whiskey. Very good, but 40% of alcohol. So, from my point of view, the coal is like the whiskey. And if you feel a disease, a liver disease, because you drink 2 bottles of whiskey every day, it's not useful for you to drink, instead of drinking 2 bottles of whiskey, it means coal, to drink 2 bottles of Marsala. For me, it means gas. So, unfortunately, with 2 bottles of Marsala, probably you will survive 1 year more, but you will die because you are alcoholists with 2 bottles of Marsala every day.
And how do you convince Scotsmen to swap from whiskey to Marsala?
I love the Scottish whiskey, and I would prefer to give some drops of Scottish whiskey or some drops of Marsala instead of drinking 2 bottles. But the problem is that even Coca-Cola is quite better than Marsala if you suffer for a liver disease. We prefer to drink lemon juice, orange juice, watermelon juice, or whatever you prefer, that we call renewables. All the renewables are some juices. They don't produce any impact on the environment. That's why if we don't do this business, we die. There is no future for anything else that is renewable, and we don't understand how it's possible that there are companies investing in new plants not based on renewable sources of energies. Because this is sustainability and this is innovation, but on the other side, investing in fossil fuel plants, from my point of view, is stupidity.
I'm sure you're not alone, and Thomas has been trying to get a word in, and I'm giving him that now.
I wanted to come back to the point that Thierry made. It's not about energy. We think we're talking about energy only, and the utility, I think, is a good element. And I take one of my customers. In the beginning, we thought we were a solar company bringing energy to a Tanzanian household. But then the Tanzanian household said, can you bring me insurance? And in the beginning, we said, insurance? Why would we're not an insurance company, but they said, hey, you brought us a product, we really like it. We need more than just energy. We need insurance, we need education, we need health services, we need, and since you have the distribution channel, you have a relationship with the customer, you have a pay-as-you-go scheme, you're digitally linked to this customer. And then the array and the portfolio of products and services that in Africa most households need when they're in a rural area is much more than energy. But once you have the relationship with energy, you become the provider of choice for all the rest of the things. So I think the utility, if you think of the African market, I probably have more customers today in Africa than you, although you're starting to, in the off-grid space at least, and actually understanding what this whole set of things you need to bring these households is within SDG 7 and a couple of others. That's the value of basically linking on-grid, microgrid, and off-grid to really make them happen.
Michelle.
I just want to add, there's another really exciting technology that's also helping in the distribution. It's not the distribution of energy, but it's the distribution of connectivity. And it's TV white spaces. It's using the unused television channels to basically extend out to remote areas. either broadband or Wi-Fi level connectivity. And we've been involved with a number of partners, probably some of them are in this room, of trying to do that in Africa and connecting them with solar and pay-as-you-go systems, of doing that in India in the agricultural context, of getting information, real-time information, machine learning tools out to the farm so that they can understand what's happening in the soil moisture and the weather and adjust. And increasingly, we're now bringing this back to the United States to do it in connectivity of rural communities. So it's both the distributed generation for energy, but also this power to increasingly connect remote places, but not needing to do that through a very centralized system.
Maveen.
I was just going to say, from a technology company who services provides a lot of solutions to the utilities. From our perspective, what we're seeing and the way we're looking at our own space is we're seeing the utilities becoming service providers. It's about selling services, right? And it's and expanding into the neighboring applications, et cetera. So interestingly enough, what it does is it makes us sit back and we start mapping it ourselves. And we have EV charging stations, we have renewables, we have storage, distributed energy resource management, all of these things. And interestingly enough, we sit back and start connecting all the dots. And we see our role also changing. And instead of looking at things in segments and looking at them in silos, that we will go and address technology and solutions in each one of these spaces. How do we bring it all together to actually help enable the transition that's happening much faster? And of course, with digitalization and all of that, bringing that together as a whole. And I think this is also, mentioned the public and private partnership, but it's also the private partnership, where not everybody plays in the entire value chain. I think some, like Anel is really going there, but there are still areas where you're not going to invest in. And so bringing people to the table, going back to what you mentioned, bringing people to the table where you're looking at the entire value chain and holistically look at how you can enable and bring everything together, because everything has to interoperate going forward, and that all can happen much faster. Through collaboration.
Okay, Thierry, and then I would like to start 2 more rounds of questions.
Okay, no, very briefly, I think if we imagine that the utility business model as we know it is going to continue, we're wrong. And I'll just give you another example, another example from China. With Adnan, we were in Hong Kong a few weeks ago when we were introduced to the Chief of Strategy from Tencent. Tencent, not everyone knows what company it is. It's WeChat. It's better known as WeChat. And the guys told me we have 961 million users and 50 billion daily contacts with our users. 50 billion. 50 billion, why? Because it's WeChat, the people communicate with that. They have 300 million people who play with their games. And by the way, nobody in China has a credit card anymore. They all pay with WeChat Pay. So that's a serious thing. Now, this means that customer relationships and services are rendered by people today who, like us, have about 10,000 times fewer contacts than Tencent. Who in the future is going to give that? And we're fighting, and we're trying to engage with our customers, etc. These other guys are doing already 10,000 times more than we are.
Are you going to them, asking them how they do it and learn from it?
Well, it's very simple. Do Amazon and Tencent. Just do it like this. Let's call it smart home. And honestly, not going to be that many players with 960 or with 50 billion content. And we have to realize that it's going to be immensely concentrated. Now, there is another dimension to the world of utility, which is a systems house. And in a world with a majority of renewable energy, there's something which is going to go away. Sorry, I'm going to be very technical. It's inertia. It's the fact that it's frequency. Our systems are going to fall apart. Our electric systems are going to fall apart for lack of rotating machines. Because all these rotating machines are going to go at one point out of business, period. And what we're going to be left with is solar and wind, which do not provide that service. Now, who's in charge today of making sure that these systems work? And the answer, you could say, hey, regulators, DSOs, well, they're lost. They're completely lost. And this is an issue which is today completely open. Nobody's really taking care of it. And I'd say I know it's fine for us to deliver cleaning and plumbing to people, etc. I'd say we should think about something else. And that's, by the way, keeping the lights on.
You know, this is not the first context of a discussion where somebody tells me that the actual decision makers, authorities, government representatives, policymakers have to make decisions on something that they're not well enough educated about, that they just simply don't know enough about. And that, that can be annoying in some fields, and it can be absolutely detrimental to humanity in others, of course. And that brings me to the first of two final rounds, where I just have one question, but I'm very much interested in an answer from all of you. So if you could change one policy that would actually make the energy transformation in your company a success, that would allow you to do your business better, what policy would you change if you could? I'm starting with you.
The off-grid industry is an industry which is nascent. And so there's a lot of, and I think Ernesto made the point before, there's a lot of experts and incumbents from the on-grid industry who think they know how to regulate the off-grid industry. It's very difficult to work in a very regulated environment for us. And I'm thinking of one thing, you know, this little machine. When I look at the market penetration in Nigeria in 2000, so 17 years ago, nobody had one of these machines, and everybody was saying it's not going to happen, it's not going to work. Today, every Nigerian I know has 2 of these machines. So within 15 years, 100% market penetration. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but what is the regulation that's needed to make the same happen for energy access? Today, the market penetration of off-grid electricity in Africa is 3%. How do we get to 100%? And maybe there's something to learn regarding the regulation in the MNO sector, mobile network operator sector, to make sure that companies like Mobisol and the others, and Phoenix and Enel, if they decide to go, you know, can be successful to achieve what's technically feasible.
Marvin?
Okay, so for microgrids, there are 2 sectors. There's the off-grid and the grid-connected. For the grid-connected applications, where we're seeing it's still very much in the pilot stage, and the utilities doing a lot of pilots, for example, in North America, trying to understand what kind of business models they can actually create and leverage. So it would be the regulatory framework allowing them to be flexible and actually allow for some changes in the business models that the utilities have to help enable the market. For the off-grid, it's really simply the government's providing clarity in terms of what is their plans for the future. You know, everybody wants to provide access to electricity, but they really need to come together and say, this is our plan, and you can invest, and this is how your investment will be secure going forward.
Terry.
In France right now, we have a very interesting debate on collective self-consumption. There's a law which was passed 6 months ago, but there's it likes a decree, and then we have a debate, and the head of the regulatory body is a fierce centralizer and is totally fundamentally opposed to anything that looks like local generation. So we have an interesting debate in France at the moment. I'd say if you have that thing, if you accept the so-called collective self-consumption, means you can share, you can do the Sonnen-style business of energy communities where people share energy generation and storage and mobility and the rest. Open that up, and then the rest is going to come. California is moving in that direction. They call that the community choice aggregators. It's a very interesting model. It's showing the way. People are just trying to see where it's going. It allows those local governments to get the customers from centralized utilities. It gives them immense responsibilities. Now, if together with these responsibilities and the opportunity to render local services, you have the responsibility to maintain the grid up and make sure that there is a continuity of service, and empower the people. I'd say what we need today is regulation that empowers people, but with one caveat, it needs to maintain security, grid security. So trust the people, but at the same time make them responsible. And all the things that we've been talking about, renewables, microgrids, storage, are all bricks into that, and mobility as well, all bricks into that. So in the French regulatory terms, we would say collective self-consumption. It's not a very nice word, but I would strongly encourage that to be developed.
But it's a very visual word and it works therefore very well. So Michelle, in California, everything is super duper, but what policy would you like to change?
So we approach this as from the perspective of both a consumer and a prosumer. And we have to operate in a lot of regulated markets, both across the United States and around the world. And for us, it's getting that access to market-based rates, to more customer choice. And then increasingly, the flexibility to be able to use our behind-the-meter assets to be able to participate in markets, if it's through distributed energy resources, if it's through aggregated demand response, or other things. So it's that flexibility to be able to increasingly participate and increasingly choose.
Ernesto.
While you were putting me the question before, I have seen many birds behind you flying in the sky and playing. So I thought that we have not to change any policy, but we should improve the love that people have for this planet. Because if we change the love for this planet, and the earth is our house, if we respect our house and if we love our house, we love ourselves. And if we were able to love ourselves, we shouldn't need any policy to push renewables in action.
It's a very philosophical answer, beautiful answer, not sure
So,
about realistic.
No, why not? Why not? Only the people who think to better the world, they make it better. So I think that we must start from culture and from a change of perspective and involving with a simple communication, mass of people, billions of people, because if billions of people will want it, things will happen. So I would prefer to think about the birds flying instead of policies.
And if that doesn't help, then you do the calculation game that convinces everyone that mindset and conviction can be very, delusive. That we don't really know what we think we know. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your very last chance to get involved in this discussion, because I'm about to, and you see it's getting much more difficult now, but I do see one hand, two hands. Let's start with a hand that I saw first, and I do remember the lady over there. If you could stand up, because it's very difficult to see now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Hannes. I'm the CTO of a startup in Bangladesh called SoulShare. We operate neighborhood sharing platforms in off-grid areas. And one interruptive technology that I haven't really heard, which I know Mobisol is using, and it's very actually widely used in the off-grid sector, is DC technology, direct current technology that changes the way we transport electricity from alternating current to direct current. And I know many of you on the panel right now are working or experimenting with this technology as well. I'd like to get a bit of a notion on where you see this going, how important you view it, and what role will it play when it comes to this game of on-grid, off-grid solutions that can be hybrid on or off-grid, depending on the use case, the business case that evolves around it.
Okay,
Thank
this
you.
is one question for the whole panel, correct?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so anyone who would like to answer, we take one or two answers. Who would like to start?
I can start. So we have been looking at the DC technology. Quite honestly, for the moment, we think it's a wait and see. There are no standards, which is a challenge. So it's part of it has to be that we have to develop the standards as an industry to help develop the products. Some of the products that are used for DC application versus AC are the power electronics and the power protection products. They're actually at the end turn out to be more expensive as a system. So from a cost effectiveness perspective, also there is a bit of a challenge there. We're certainly looking at it. If you look at on very, very low voltage and for single homes, there are companies who are doing that, especially in India. and they do that well. It's cost effective. But if you start looking at it in terms of larger sizes and masses, the industry is really not there yet. And in terms of applications, we're not seeing a lot of demand coming in from our customers that we need to develop this further. So we're monitoring it, we're participating in the standards and trying to influence where we can to help ensure that if it is deployed, that it's in fact something that you can replicate and it's also cost effective.
I'll just add that it is, if you want an ecosystem of DC, you need also have the right appliances that go with it. So it's a problem of scale. We are strong believers in DC at the immense scale that will be required for the electrolysis of water from massive solar farms. We're talking about hundreds of gigawatts that will need to be built in places like Chile, Argentina, Australia, etc., to fit into these massive electrolyzers, which will be on the coast of those various countries. And obviously, if you want to transport hundreds of terawatt hours in an efficient manner, there's no such, you don't want to convert to AC on one way and back. So having dedicated installations, but we're talking about things which are not totally decentralized. We're talking about billions and dozens of billions of dollars of investment. So in this case, we're strong believers. At a smaller scale, it's different.
All right. Time is getting very, very tight now. I promised the lady to ask a question. If you could keep it very, very brief, please.
Yes, I'll keep it brief. Mariana Heinrich from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. I'm in charge of our energy work. And my question is, we've been talking a bit about, the household part of energy access, microgrids and so on. But how about the energy users, and particularly the commercial and the industrial companies? Because if we're talking about energy as a service, then they will not only require the power, they also require the heat and the mobility. And I think today we can all see the solutions of electric vehicles, we have heat pumps and so on, but obviously they're going to need more of an energy service from your company. So the question very quickly to, I think maybe Thierry and Ernesto, on how do you think your companies can provide energy services to, let's say, maybe chemical aluminium companies, and what do you think are the solutions that you can provide, particularly for the high temperature heat demand that is a big outstanding problem? Thank you.
Thank you. Ernesto, you start.
Once I listened Woody Allen saying, I didn't understand the question, but the answer is yes. No, it's a joke made by Woody Allen, no? But no, because I wanted to say that we are doing this. We have been doing this for 3 years, and we have started a dedicated business line, global business line, e-solution, focused only on this, with some people dedicated only to e-business and e-city, providing services, not providing energy, but services to cities and companies. This is a huge potential. I was trying to sell to her before something that when unfortunately you interrupted
Yeah, well,
me.
you should not have admitted that.
It's a joke, but yes, because we do this. And we think that if we can even create renewable plants where there is the company. And we can provide renewable source of energy for the company, making it independent. What is the problem? We must go against ourselves. What is our business model? We generate energy, we distribute, we sell. No. We cancel all the value chain and we say, hey, what do you need? We have a big renewable plant in Oklahoma and in Kansas, I was saying before. No, very big wind plant. We can start up a data center there, or a mining company for blockchain there. Or on the opposite, where do you have your plant? We can come and establish a renewable source of energy, a renewable plant just for you.
Okay, understood. Thierry, one sentence,
simple.
please.
Today, I'll take the example of an aluminum company in France, which today has an issue because it used to have 40 euros per annum guaranteed power for 20 years, and the last time they had a contract like this was sold them by EDF and was 7 years ago. EDF is no longer in that position today because nuclear costs have skyrocketed. We're right now working with them on what we call a dispatchable renewable offer. Solar plus wind plus flexibility plus storage, delivering exactly that. So when people say, when is the time for renewables? It's now. And we are very confident that just immediately after this becomes announced, who in their right mind is going to choose something expensive, dirty, and not stable versus when there is a stable position. So that's the energy side. And then what we're talking about now on the mobility side is not just providing charging stations. We bought, by the way, one of the largest charging stations company in the world, which is EVBox, a Dutch company, which is the largest in Europe. That's not sufficient. People today want integrated solutions. They want fleets, plus charging stations, plus the service that goes with it, plus the clean energy supply, plus the 24/7 guarantee that they can charge, plus the autonomy, plus the productivity. And we're doing that right now. Is this an energy business? Maybe. Is this a mobility business? Maybe. It's probably both of them. Today, we're starting from what customers want. And customers want it all. They want incredible mobility solutions. They want incredible dispatchable renewables. And it's at hand. And this is, in my opinion, the role of our companies to be able to listen to that. And more than that, to anticipate to those dreams, which actually are needs.
Okay, well, thank you to the whole panel at this point. I think certainly we have witnessed the birth of a new industry, even if we don't know yet how to name it, but we're getting there. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience with us. That deserves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. So thank you all. I invite you to take a seat and join us, of course, for the rest of the afternoon, and I'm very happy to hand over now to the Director General of IRENA, Adnan Amin, who is going to welcome the Governor of California, and we very much look forward to both of them.
Well, friends, we've had a really fascinating day today. I think those of you who have been here the whole day, you've seen the vitality, the ingenuity, the science, the policy, the vision, and people who understand this business who are talking about the point of transformation globally being here and the fact that we have no more alternative anymore. But this needs leadership. So, you know, I got my kids, since the last US election, I got my kids to teach me what Twitter is, because I figured I need to know what's happening. There are a lot of international policy happens on Twitter. So I found that there's an article that went viral yesterday on Politico, which said, is Governor Jerry Brown the President of the Republic of California? And but I don't agree with that, because I think Governor Jerry Brown represents something quintessentially American. It's not just California, which is the vision all of us have had of a United States that is enlightened, that is practical, that is looking at the future, and that is taking bold decisions that many of us actually have followed. And I think that's still the case. And I think it's wonderful today for us. You know, you've had the meal. We've been discussing heavy things the whole day. So now we're going to have dessert, which is having Governor Jerry Brown address us and then have a conversation for a little while later. So Governor Brown, can I invite you to take the lectern, please? Please join me in welcoming Governor Brown.
Thank you. Well, you've been hearing a lot of talk today, so I don't want to add too much more, other than to say that although America at the highest level is temporarily on holiday from climate action, it doesn't mean that America is there as well, because America is a very diverse country with 50 states, thousands of cities and villages and counties, and philosophy that runs the gamut from left to right. I represent one state, California, the biggest state, 40 million people. It's a state that's seen conservative governors, Ronald Reagan. It saw the emergence of Richard Nixon as a senator and the President Hoover before Roosevelt. So we have had our share of Republicans. In fact, the latest in California was Governor Schwarzenegger, and he signed the Global Warming Solutions Act, which was very important and setting California on a path of climate action and greenhouse gas reduction, which is where we are. It is a state that cares about the environment. In fact, our rules are unique. We have a special prerogative in American law that California can set stricter emission rules than other states. And when we set those stricter rules, other states can choose to follow California rather than the national government. And that remains the law. That started when my predecessor, Ronald Reagan, was governor in 1969, when the United States adopted the Clean Air Act. And the Clean Air Act specified that California could have its own rules. And the reason for that was the smog, the very bad air pollution in Los Angeles. And leaders, conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican, all wanted to do something. Similar to what the response is in China to the pollution there in Shanghai and Beijing and other cities. And similar, I think, to what the response will be in India because of the horrible pollution in New Delhi. We're reacting to something real threat to health and human well-being. So that regime of law continues to the present day. And under these special legal prerogatives, California has enacted one measure after another to tighten down its emissions. And we have a goal now, 50% renewable electricity by 2030. We're about 30% now. Some electric utilities are at 40 or 45% renewable energy. So we have that as our what we call our portfolio standard. But we have also other things. We have the strictest energy efficiency regulations for buildings and for appliances. And those have been around for quite a long time. The first time I was governor in 1975, California started developing building regulations for energy efficiency. Those regulations took over 8 years to finish. And then they went into effect 1983. And every few years, those regulations are revised and made more effective. So that now they are by far the most sophisticated and the most effective energy regulations for buildings anywhere in the United States. I'd say anywhere certainly in the Western Hemisphere. So that is another way that California has been able to lead. We also have a cap and trade system with a carbon price set by the market of over $14 a ton. It's a cap which goes down every year. And the goal is to get our emissions down from about 445 million tons, that is what is happening today, to about 260 or slightly below in 12 years. So this year, the preliminary indication is that we went down 5% in 2016. We have a goal that our emissions will be 40% below the 1990 emissions by 2030. We have policies that encourage zero-emission vehicles, and we're going to increase those policies. California and China are on the same track when it comes to zero-emission vehicles. China is the biggest market in the world, and they are demanding an ever-increasing number of zero-emission cars for any car company that would sell product in China. California is the biggest car market in America. We have 40% of the electric cars, and we're driving in the same goal. So my recommendation to the German car makers, get with the program, give us more zero-emission vehicles at a price we can afford, and we'll buy them. In fact, I met with a representative from Volkswagen when he came out to pay his $1 billion fine. And he sat in my office and we talked about zero-emission vehicles, and we want them to spend that money. We want to spend that money in a positive renewable energy program. So we don't want to just be punitive, we want to be creative. And California is noted for its creativity. This is the place of Hollywood. By the way, Hollywood produced 2 governors, Ronald Reagan and Schwarzenegger. In fact, President Reagan said to a movie star friend of mine while looking at a movie in the White House, during the intermission, he leaned to this movie star and he said, you know, I can't understand how a person could be president unless they were first a movie actor. I don't know, just a little anecdote. But it's an innovative place, not just movies. Silicon Valley, we know about that. Companies that are hugely successful that didn't exist before. Most of these big companies, Facebook, Qualcomm, Apple, they weren't even around when I first ran for office in 1970. The world has changed, and the world will change again. And this time we have to change it to go from dirty fossil fuel to clean renewable energy, and we can do it. California likes innovation. This is the home of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. This is the home of very innovative agriculture, biotech. It's a diverse place. 1 out of 4 people who live in California were born in a foreign country. So it's a very yeasty confluence of many philosophies, many ethnicities, many points of view. And when you put all that together, you get, you get conflict, that's for sure, but you also get incredible production and outcome. So I think the point is twofold. One, we're up against a hell of a problem. It could wreak havoc. Every problem that Germany and the world faces is going to get worse if we don't do something very dramatic about climate change. There will be tens of millions of migrants, not millions, tens and hundreds of millions, if life becomes unlivable. And it will become unlivable. The heat, the wet bulb heat with the humidity and the rising temperature is lethal. And how can anybody survive that? So they're going to move unless we stop it. We stop it with forceful mitigation measures, which is the point of Paris, and we have to meet the Paris Accords, and we have to go beyond. We can't be satisfied that even these lofty goals are enough. We need lofty action. In fact, we need real action. And when I say we, of course, I mean everybody, because there's no one. This is not Europe's problem only, or China, or India, or Africa. It's the world. This is a world problem. And that's what makes it so difficult. Nobody's really in charge, but we're all responsible. And the solution to this problem will bring the world closer together. If we don't solve it, it'll blow it up in ways we can't even imagine. But if we take the action, we'll increase our sense of solidarity as members of the human race. We'll sense our common destiny together. And so our task here is not just mechanical, not just market, it's also the human imagination to envision a world that works for all of us and a world that has more harmony than deadly conflict. That's not the world yet, but if we really take seriously the challenge of climate change, that will have to be our response. And in responding in an intelligent way, we will make the changes that will improve our lives and improve the lives of the people to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You just woke everybody up.
Good. We better wake up because the hour is late.
Governor, we had a great day because we had policymakers from Africa, from Latin America, from Europe, from Asia. We had innovators, we had entrepreneurs, we had scientists. Everybody was here and talking about the fact that everything is now in our hands. So that's one. We have the possibility we never had before. And the second is that the urgency of action now is something we never had before. We cannot afford to wait to decarbonize the world. Whatever we see in terms of climate, you outlined all of those. We don't have the luxury of time anymore. So, I last met you, I was just thinking as you were talking, it was a year and a half ago in San Francisco when we had the Clean Energy Ministerial, you remember. And you were still talking, but it was a completely different frame. We got used to the vision of a United States that's leading innovation, invention, entrepreneurship, and we find ourselves today in a place where it's doubling down on the economy of the past. So is there an implication of that for all of us, for the future?
Yes.
What is the implication and how do we change it?
The implication is for you to redouble your own efforts. So we have in Washington what I call the null hypothesis. Climate change is a hoax. So that is pushing in our face the total negative of what we know to be true. So that should stimulate a response on our part to do even more than we'd otherwise do. And why? Well, the folks, these very strange people in Washington, are carrying on their frolic and detour, if I could call it that. We in California and many other states, corporations and universities, we have our own American promise. We have our own commitment, and we're holding the line. You know, we're carrying forward. We can't get the job done ultimately, but for the next few years, we can keep the momentum. And we're building in California with our low carbon fuel standard, with our electrical vehicle incentives, with our requirement for ever increasing amounts of renewable energy, and our increasing building standards and appliance standards. We're doing things, and our cap and trade system. And we're not sitting back in California. We're linked with Quebec and Ontario, and we'll link with other places. So we're on the move. We have at least 3 years of work before we straighten out Washington. But we'll straighten out Washington. Believe me, power is shifting west, not east.
I think you're absolutely right about the call to action to everybody, because everybody, it's all our responsibility, and I think everybody in this room understands that. But we know that you come from a state, you know, you've talked about the entertainment industry, Hollywood, science, you've talked about Silicon Valley, innovation, all the stuff that comes out of California. So California is taking its responsibility, and under your leadership, we're very confident that you're going to go in a direction that really signals progress. What about the rest of the US? I hear there are 25 states that are like-minded. I hear that there are more and more private sector organizations that are signing on. Right. We have corporate procurement where the big tech companies are buying renewable energy. Do you think the US will be able to meet its responsibility for decarbonization under Paris even without the membership?
Well, first of all, it's hard for America to meet it, but it's hard for Europe to meet this. You know, you got your coal problems, you have your fossil fuel cars, you have your inefficient buildings, as do America and the rest of the world. So we all have a problem. This latest experience with Mr. Trump is very unusual, but it's only a small part of the larger challenge that the world faces. So California is not alone. There's New Jersey under new government. They'll be signing up for real climate action. There's Virginia that just signed up our Under 2 coalition, the states and provinces worldwide, representing far more than 1 billion people and 40% of the world's GDP. We're in a coalition to meet the Paris agreements. And it's not just 15 or 20 states, but it's corporations, corporate executives. Big companies are joining the effort. Walmart, electric companies, Kaiser Health. There's all sorts of I don't want to leave anyone out because there are a lot of companies. They're coming on board. So there's a lot to do. So I don't want to overstate, because I think what we have to do requires such heroic effort that I don't like to make you overstate where we are. We got a long way to go. We're not on track yet. I don't know who is on track that is not embedded in this carbon civilization. We are carbon. That's what made Western civilization. It's made modernity and progress. And now to go away from that and enter into a decarbonized future is radical in the true sense of the word, going down to the roots of who we are. So it's going to take innovation, it's going to take political imagination, it's going to take a level of cooperation, and yet then we have all these little parochial battles, East and West, and rivalries of one kind or another. We have to rise above all that and come together in this common threat and overcome it. And I think the skill that it will take to overcome the threat will also give us some pathways of greater cooperation in the world. That would be my optimistic hope. Of course, we might not. We got all these nuclear weapons waiting to go off. We have all these coal plants spewing their poison into the atmosphere. So this is a tale of at least two cities. One looks good, the other looks pretty bad. So I think America, we have a long way to go. We've got a lot of troglodytes. You all know what a troglodyte is, don't you? A troglodyte is a cave dweller. Look it up on Google. So we have people who live in the caves of their own stunted imagination, and we have to bring them out into the light. Or something, maybe even more sophisticated audience might, maybe Plato's cave. And Plato in his myth of that, so people who lived in the cave and only saw shadows thought that was reality. So there's a lot of people like that. They live in shadows. However, you're here. You've heard all these speakers. We have this COP23. So I think it's up to us to keep going and find allies and add and bring people to the sense of action. But so that's it. I don't want to discourage you by saying we're not getting the job done, but I do want to encourage you to say we have a lot more to do. We have a lot more to do, and we don't even know how we can do it. The innovation doesn't exist yet for the battery storage that's cheap, to deal with removing emissions in agriculture, protecting our forests. How the hell are we going to do that? It's really complicated. And we have all these other little world conflicts that get people all excited from these age-old historical rivalries. So humanity is on the chopping block. And there's some people who don't think we'll make it. But I'm hopeful we will.
We need leadership. And clearly, I'm trying not to smile in case somebody takes a picture and sends it to the White House.
What?
But, but leadership, I think, is the key thing, because what we've discussed this whole day is that there's a lot of innovation that's happened. There's a lot of positive examples we see around the world. There's a lot of industry leaders who are looking at transformed economies and who are looking at the urgency of action, but then we have political barriers. I don't even think we have financial barriers anymore, because we have finance people here who are talking about wanting to put money into this because this is the future. So in terms of political leadership, you're running this Under 2 coalition. What's your advice to everybody? What can we do? Can we support the Under 2? What areas of action can people work in the private sector, in public sector, in academia? How do we move this forward?
Well, academia, to continue the scientific investigation. In the political domain, do what you can locally, what you can regionally, and then what you can nationally. Business, the people with the money, deploy that money in a sustainable way. Be a part of the encouragement of the sustainable path. So I think there's plenty for everybody to do, and I think we're at a point where we see victory, that we can get to zero emission. We're not quite sure how we can get there, and on the other hand, we might fail. So that should keep us on the edge of our chair here to renew our sense of commitment and our resolve to keep going, keep collaborating, and make it all happen. So when you come to San Francisco for our fall summit, you'll have something to tell us about, doing more than we're doing right now, and we'll set in motion for the next one and the next one. And if we do everything we can, human beings can solve this problem. I'm confident of that. But we got a lot of obstacles to move out of the way, not to mention a few politicians.
I think everybody here agrees with you. Everybody here feels that you have some message to give us that we need to move forward. And I know you have a massive fan club, so I'm not going to keep asking you questions. I'm going to ask the audience if there's anybody who has a burning issue for Governor Jerry Brown that they want to ask. Don't be shy. He's a nice guy. Madam.
Thank you. I'm Vanya Walker-Lee from the Malta Business Weekly. Governor Brown, you were at the press conference at the European Parliament on Tuesday, where I asked Commissioner Cañete about the UNEP emissions gap report and whether he would recommend its reading to the member states of the European Union. His reply was, Europe has the most ambitious targets with legislation in place.
You know, could you say that once again? And
sure.
Maybe I can catch it.
You were sitting next to Commissioner Cañete at a
Yes.
press conference on Tuesday. I asked a question about the UNEP emissions gap report.
Oh, the UNEP, the gap, okay.
And all he had to say was that Europe has the most ambitious targets and legislation in place. And I was very grateful, sir, that you picked up on one or two points. So do you think that we should just ignore this report, or it should become the basis for high-level political discussion?
Does everyone know about the UNEP gap report? I haven't read it, but I'm told that it says we got a long way to go. There's a big gap between what we're saying and what we're doing. So I would say, rub your nose in that gap report until you finally get it. So here's here's the dilemma. You have to realize how pathetic our response is in comparison to the task ahead, without despairing, without losing hope. So you have to have the optimism and the energy that is not based on anything we can see right now. That sounds like faith. But you have to have some ability to, maybe if I can quote a famous fellow whose name I won't mention, but he said he had pessimism of the intellect, but optimism of the will. And I sometimes feel that way. I don't know how we're going to get it done, but I feel that we can get it done, and nothing is more important or more exciting than taking those steps to transform our civilization and our whole economy by reducing the emissions to zero and then going further and actually extracting some of the carbon that we have to get out of the atmosphere to really get our climate balance in the way it should be.
We have one of the godfathers of solar energy here, Eike Weber from Fraunhofer. Eike.
I know.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have both of you on stage. And Jerry, you remember the Under 2 Coalition was an idea coming out of our meeting at Intersolar.
You helped create it, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you so much.
The solar meeting in San Francisco 3 years ago.
The point which I would like to make is we are here in Bonn, Germany. And we have right now in Berlin extremely important negotiations how to form the next government. And I have the feeling that in these negotiations, these critically important points, which we are just discussing, are completely neglected. They talk about the details of what to do with immigration and what to do with coal without recognizing the big danger we are facing, the huge global situation. And in Germany, to this very day, we always get the argument, we Germans are crazy with going out of nuclear power. The other world builds nuclear power plants. We are alone in the world. So I would be very grateful when out of here comes as well the message, no, Germany, you are not alone. California and many other members of the Under 2 coalition are going strongly this way, and in the coalition negotiations in Berlin, they should catch this on. There is a big chance for the so-called Jamaica coalition with the Greens and the Liberals and the Conservatives, but please, if you can have a few words in this direction, that they should recognize the big issues which are at stake here. That is, in my view, completely lost in Berlin.
Well, I can cite California, but one thing, we have a lot more sun than you have here in Germany. And we have less of that basic manufacturing. So that makes our life a little easier. And Well, the climate change is somewhat, it's here, but in the consciousness of people, it's further away. So when you have the costs of energy, and you have the heavy industry, steel and cars, that becomes difficult. Of course, it's nothing that money can't solve in financing. So it's you don't get this done overnight, but you do have to be clear about the threat, and it's not going to get any easier. So I'm not giving the political leadership here advice, because I don't have the same conditions. I have plenty to do in my own state of California. And even in California, we had difficulty getting our cap and trade program and getting other clean energy measures passed. And there's no great appetite for many of these initiatives. So it takes leadership, and yeah, you got some conflict. But Germany is one of the key players, as you know, in the world. So how that coalition gets put together, and I don't even know that the participants know how they're going to do it. So that's the wonders of your form of democracy. You have my best wishes.
Well, we have Rainer Backe here, which is it's very good, because Rainer has been shepherding the process of the Energiewende, and we are wishing him very good luck in the next phase of the discussion. Because
I think the problem is people still don't take the climate threat seriously enough.
Yeah.
We're talking about it, but in the world of politics, climate change is not the most immediate thing. Taxes, safety, public safety, these are very immediate. And yet, if you really dig into the facts, I just came back from Oslo, where I met with several national academies of science. The National Academy in Norway, from Germany, from Canada, from Sweden, Denmark, and they're unanimous in the dire threat that climate change represents. Now, we don't know all the different consequences, but we know there are plenty of bad ones. And every year, it's going to get more expensive. So whatever the problem is today, it's going to be bigger in 5 years, much less in 10 years. So, but yeah, politics is a business of staying in power. Yeah. You might say, what's your business? My business is to get more votes than my opponents. And so it's kind of a low business, to tell you the truth. But, so we got to help. We have to help our politicians do the right thing by creating the political support. And that's all I would say.
There's a very philosophical point. We have an Italian philosopher here who claims that he works in energy, and he has been telling us a lot of interesting things. But one of the things he said is, the only way you're going to save something is if you love it. And if you look out there and you see our nature and our world and our earth. So I want to ask you, you were at the Vatican a couple of days ago, and the change of culture and faith and internalization of all these issues is going to be central to people's participation in this movement. What do you think we need to do about that? Is that something that we need to...
What's that?
Building a culture that understands that climate is our priority, building a faith-based coalition.
Awareness. Well, wait, you said building the culture, and then you threw in faith-based.
Yeah.
Now, I did study to be a Jesuit priest, so I feel this is one of my businesses. But faith, I don't know what to say about faith. I mean, that's a whole nother story. We could have a day just on where the hell the faith is, where did it go? But I think what we have to do is work on awareness, work on getting an understanding. And it's not just the rise in temperature, it's the destruction of species. You said love nature, love the birds, the animals, your children. We're all part of a web of life, and that doesn't take a faith. It takes clarity. It takes seeing that we are a part of and not separate from the pattern of life. And we are at war with this pattern of life, and the result is the death to tens of thousands of species. We don't even know all the species, and we're destroying them. We don't know what species does what kind of work, what services are being provided. that enables this thing called the economy. We're all into economy and numbers, but evolution was not about the economy. It's the processes of nature, and we have to make sure we get on the side of that. So I think understanding, education, research, honest talk, that's what we need. And unfortunately, politics is a cacophony of confusion and misstatements. So in that context, it's very hard to...
but that's exactly the problem. You know, we're living in a world where we don't know what's right anymore. A lot of people
we're
out
living
there...
in a world of fake
news. So,
and fake
you know,
politicians.
Yeah. Well, there's a great ad on CNN where they said, you know, show an apple, and they said, this is an apple. You can call it a banana if you want, but it's still an apple. How do you get to that kernel of truth as part of this awareness strategy? How do you combat fake news and disinformation, which has become part of the political discourse?
If I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't be here. I'd be off doing... Well, I'll tell you what
we
I
have
do.
to find
but
the
in any
answer
event,
to that. We have to find the answer to that.
Well, look, that's always been true. There's always... human beings are making statements based on inadequate evidence.
Yeah.
That's just what it is to be human. But we know a lot, and we have serious people, like for the academies of science. We have corporate leaders. We have university leaders. What is needed is over and over again affirming the truth of the climate cause, the climate threat, and how it can be overcome. And we have so many other distractions. So we have this, that was Paris Agreement, that's COP23. This is part of the process of enlightening the citizens, enlightening the people, and making sure we get on a path that will lead to a decarbonized future. We're not on it yet. We're talking about it. We're doing some things. You heard a lot of innovative things, a lot more than we had a couple of years ago. So, you know, there's movement, and I would just say, let's strengthen our resolve, and let's not fool ourselves about the difficulty or the lack of progress that's also true. So all those things are elements.
We know you're a very down-to-earth person, and you don't like superlatives, but I want to, on behalf of everybody here, thank you for your leadership. It's inspiring.
Thank you. And thank you for all being here, because it's up to all of us. There's no one person that's going to do this. You're doing it, we're doing it, and we keep spreading, and pretty soon the whole world is with us.
Well, thank you. We are with you.
Okay.
You tell us what to do. We want to know, and then we'll do
Well,
that.
come to the summit in San Francisco, fall of 2018, and I'll tell you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Governor Brown, and thank you, Adnan Amin, for this enlightening conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, Governor Brown said one thing that I would like to pick up on straight away, because leads us nicely into our final session of this day. Time flies when you have a good time, indeed. What he said, basically, I just transcribe it, that you have to tell politicians how to do the right thing, because they need to get re-elected. And that does not only work on a national, it also works on a subnational level. And so local politicians on a regional level, people in charge of cities and communities, they have a major task. They're at the front line, if you like, when it comes to the energy transition and transformation, because they have to do something that maybe isn't always very pleasant or very easy to grasp for their community, because it may require higher taxes, certainly changes in everyday life, but it is important to do it, and it is important for them to show leadership. And we now, in this final panel, we have some local, community level, government level leaders here who can share with us what they've achieved already in embracing renewable energy and bringing it down to their communities. So please put your hands together. I'm sure we're all tired, but this will give you energy because it makes the blood flow in your veins. If you give a very, very heartful and heartfelt applause to Roseanne Cunningham, Cabinet Secretary for the Environment, Climate Change and Land Use in Scotland. Good to have you with us. Well done. I've avoided that all day. Thank you so much. Please do take a seat. Very warm welcome, yes, anywhere. Jean-Baptiste Cornefer, I haven't met you in person, so I don't know if I pronounced you correctly. Managing Director of Sonnen. And Sonnen E-Services is a company that is headquartered in the Oberallgäu. Yes. That is where I used to live, very nice area in Germany, produces home energy storage systems for private households and small businesses. Then we also say a very warm welcome to Kabianga Baluku Godfrey Kime, Mayor of Kasese, Uganda. There he is. Hello, welcome. And I read in your biography that you have a passion for the environment. I'm very curious to hear from you how you live this passion. Also a very warm welcome to Katrin Sternfeld Jamme, Mayor of Malmö, Sweden. Hope I pronounced your name halfway decent. It's okay. You knew that you were meant. And finally, Claude Turmes or Tourmé? Turmes, member of the European Parliament, and they're part of the EU Green Party. Welcome to you as well. The governor sat on this one just now. He probably was a bit lively. Okay, so I keep an eye out for you. Okay, before we start with individual questions, I mean, you were all just listening to this session before, and what has been said repeatedly in the course of this conference was that it's not good enough anymore to point with your finger at others and wait for others to take the initiative, but it's basically us in our very personal, professional capacity to make a move, to do the first step. So where, if you describe it, where would you see your role in not just kicking off, but actually living and moving the energy transformation towards renewable energy, as the mayor of Sweden, for example, or Malmö in Sweden?
Okay. I would like to say that you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I would like to state that I think it's very, very important with its political leadership. And part of it, and a very important part, is to make sure that you have lots of different actors moving in the same direction. And then you have to make sure that everyone can see that this is a win-win. We have different obligations, we have different interests, but we share the interest of creating sustainable societies. But we have if you work with, as a mayor, I have the interest of the citizens, but I work with some companies that also have to see that they make profits out of this process of developing new technology, for example. So I think the leadership is very much of getting people together and see that you can't do it on your own, you have to collaborate.
Roseanne Cunningham, as a member of a government cabinet, you know, where do you see your role in pushing energy transformation on the scale that you would like to see to happen?
Well, the interesting thing is, the way our cabinet is set up, I'm not actually the energy minister. I have a responsibility that kind of overarches all of my colleagues in the way that a finance secretary would have that responsibility. So my job is very much to ensure that all my colleagues have got climate change and low carbon economy very much at the center of what they do. So I set the targets for them, but they must be the ones that actually deliver. And you can't do it if you've only got one person in government who is responsible. So actually, at this session, there's at least 1, 2, 3 other government ministers from Scotland who could equally have come to speak on this panel. And I actually think that's very important, because if it becomes bracketed into a single kind of pillar, it doesn't actually achieve what needs to be achieved. So you need to get right across all of the cabinet areas, right across all the government areas, to ensure that it's embedded. And most important of all, everybody has to be working to embed it at a very local level too. And I think that Those things are what begin to drive change, and change that then begins to catch up on itself and moves even faster. But without that conversation, you're not, I don't think, going to achieve what you want to achieve. We are very lucky in Scotland in that there is no political controversy about climate change. So it doesn't matter.
Makes your
left
job easier.
Or right, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everybody has agreed that this is a defining challenge. So yes, that does make the job easier. It doesn't mean that everybody agrees about every aspect of the delivery of it. There are healthy debates about that, but there is no political challenge to the need, against the need to actually do this work. Now, that may be anomalous. We may be unusual in that, but it makes an enormous difference when you're trying to move forward, and we've been moving forward quite fast.
And at that point, I would like to jump to Claude, because it must be a similar setup. You are part of an even bigger parliament, of course, with the European Union. So how would you define your role in that setup?
So basically, my role today is not different from the role I had 30 years ago when I was a grassroots green activist. After Rio, where we had already an American president who was on holidays when it came to climate change, Bush Senior, what was the reaction when I came back to Luxembourg? I created Climate Alliance Luxembourg with 6 local mayors. Today in Luxembourg, 25 years later, all local authorities in Luxembourg are in a strategic partnership with the Luxembourgish government. If they do a climate-friendly action, they get cash from the budget. So, and now, and in 1999, I was elected to the European Parliament. Since then, I have promoted the Covenant of Mayors, which means we have today 7,000 local authorities. If I'm a bit in the terminology of Governor Brown, who kicks the ass of national ministers who don't move. So my strategic alliance is, my problem is I have 28 ministers, I have a conservative party and even more conservative extreme right, liberals who sometimes don't know where to go, and I use the power of the local authorities to move them. Mm-hmm. And I have brought 2 slides. Maybe we have later.
Later. Yeah.
So to show you, Europe is not on track today, and we need to expose this, and we need a strategy to go beyond. And the second issue is the cities don't like what has been proposed last week, which is make diesel great again. I think that cannot be the strategy of Europe. Make diesel great again
that is definitely an issue but that does not define your role. Your role, as you defined it perfectly before, was to kick ass, probably also with the car industry.
Sorry. I might be even the rapporteur on that legislation. I think a lot of people don't understand Europe. You have a European Commission which makes a proposal, then it gets to the European Parliament. If I'm the rapporteur of that file, I can do a strategy with cities who don't like diesel, who want electric, and I can do a strategy with the other part of the legislative power, which is the 28 ministers. So it is always about having a strategy where you join forces to push the boundaries. And my third fight in this moment is to get the big utilities not to kill Sonnen, because we have also, and tomorrow afternoon, I have to go back to Strasbourg. We will negotiate the new text of the Renewable Energy Directive, and I can tell you there is mountains like that of amendments not to encourage self-production and self-consumption, which is exactly, and I think it was so beautiful this afternoon to see the technology is right, the companies are right, but in this case, we have forces who want to prevent what is in the air. And there also my role is, again, to collect support to move the boundaries.
Okay, and next to you, the gentleman, Godfrey, Mayor of Cassese, And I know that you worked in the corporate world before in various capacities. And I mentioned already, you said yourself in your biography, you have a great passion for the environment. So how do you see your role as mayor to push the energy transformation?
I think one thing, I saw the need of the community. Mine is a different story from Europe, because I come from Africa, and tropical Africa, the real Africa, which is still virgin and original, as God created it. And access to energy is still very, very minimal, because in my country, access to energy, people who can access clean renewable energy is about 17%. So we still have a very, very big problem. But the town where I come from, historically, it has one of the highest mountains, actually the second highest mountain in East Africa. And it is snow-capped throughout the year. But the snow is receding at a very high rate. And in Uganda, we have tribes. And every tribe has a name. And my tribe, where I come from, we get our name, the name originates from that snow mountain. We are called the people of the snow, Banyarwenzuru. And therefore, if there is no snow, we have no name. And why is it receding? Because of climate change effects. And therefore, to save our identity, we must save the snow. And that's why we went in, to mitigate against climate change. And one of the mitigation measures was to go clean renewable energy, to go into energy-saving stoves, because people are still using the 3-stone cooking stove, which is consuming a lot of firewood, and then planting more trees. And in clean renewable energy, we wanted to abandon the candle, the tin candle. You might not have seen it in Europe, but for us, we make a small tin, we can use kerosene or even diesel to get light, and it produces a lot of soot. And I think the pollution by that candle is too much. So what we did is we used that cultural motivation of saving the snow to convince people to change from using the candle to go clean renewable energy. But now the problem was access, because the national distributor couldn't go to the villages, couldn't even go to the peri-urban areas, because it didn't make businesses to them. So we mobilized. Now, as a politician, as a mayor, with others, we mobilized the community to form our own public company. And went to government and said, we can distribute power to the villages and to the peri-urban areas of the town, where your national distributor feels it doesn't make businesses. Luckily enough, government had liberalized the power sector and had allowed other distributors to come in. And they gave us conditions to have an amount of money. So we mobilized the community, and we mobilized 10,000 people, and each one bought a share, at least one share, at $3. And we mobilized the local government surrounding the town to also put in some contribution from local revenue. And we raised the money to, first of all, come up with a business plan. And then we approached private sector foundation. There was money from the European Union, and they said, we can finance 50% of your business plan. So our local contribution, the 50% from private sector foundation, we managed to come up with a bankable business plan. And when we presented it to government, luckily enough, government had already set up the Rural Electrification Agency, and the World Bank and European Union had put in a lot of money, and this was a grant. And we said, we are now here, and government gave us a grant, 5.3 million US dollars. So they don't give us cash. what they did, they constructed for us the distribution infrastructure. And after that, they gave us a concession to run and manage the infrastructure for 25 years. And we started now connecting the villages. We call it lighting villages. But we faced another problem, because from the distribution line to the pole, to the house, someone must buy a pole. And it became very expensive for the local people to buy poles. We went back to government and said, now people can't manage the poles. And there was another project called output-based aid. It was also financed by the development partners, DANIDA, European Union, World Bank, and there was money for that. So they gave us money for the poles. And our work now was to take the power to the house, and therefore the work of the community was to wire the house. And we said, we also suggested to government that collecting money, billing people will be very difficult. So we teamed up with the Chinese company, and they were the first company to introduce prepaid meters. So you consume power that you are paid for. When your card gets exhausted, power goes off. We don't need to chase you. And now the national distributor, which was a big company, is copying from us. So we are very proud people to lead by example. So now that one, we have managed to connect 10,000 homesteads in a period of 5 years. Wow. And we have improved the accessibility from 9% to now 24%. 17% is on the national grid, and 7% is solar. So why did we go solar? Because of the nature of our terrain in the Rwenzori, very beautiful mountain, and all of you should come there. You will like it. Even if we get a lot of money, there are some places where taking the national grid will be more than impossible. But in Africa, we have 12 hours of sunshine and 12 hours of darkness. Today I was at the luncheon and someone said, let us go and see the sun. And I didn't see the sun. I only saw light. But for us, we see the sun from 6. It rises at 6, and we see it setting at 6 every day throughout the world. There. So we thought in those mountains where we cannot reach with the national grid, we should go solar. And that's when WWF came in, one of the organizations working with us. And we said probably we are doing things in a rudimentary way. And they came in and with their expertise, because for us at local level, we don't have energy officers.
I now know why it says passion in your biography.
Exactly.
And what I really, really appreciate, which really sticks out in all the conversations today, you always say, we do this. We went to ask or push the government doing this and that. So that in itself is quite an eye-opener. Please don't take it personally if I interrupt you. I just want to make sure that Jean-Baptiste next to you, because you said a few things that just fit perfectly for me to include Jean-Baptiste. I mean, we heard how Godfrey and his team had to mobilize a lot of people. I mean, you provide an extraordinary new technology services to private households, to SMEs, to storage power. Do you need to mobilize these people to actually take your service, or they do come knocking on your door? How do you go about that?
Thanks for the question. I think also the title of this session was well suited to me, because I think the clear thing is driving the energy transformation from the bottom up. And this is, I'm since more than a decade in the energy business, and this is what fundamentally changed. Yeah? So in the past, we had a fully centralized system based on big coal or big thermal power plants with high voltage transmission lines. And today, I mean, this was quoted in the previous speeches, that the consumer is in charge. The consumer is called a prosumer, at least in Europe, has its own production facilities. Yeah? And it could be solar. It's not as sunny as in Uganda, but still in the south of Germany, you have also quite some amount of sun. And if you combine that with the right technology, as this is what we're providing to our customers, I mean, you can be, I would not say fully independent, but you're on the path to independency. Yeah? And I think it's a first major step. You asked a question about the buy-in of the customer, and I think we see a fundamental trend into that direction. I think it also needs awareness. Yeah? Not everybody knows that it's, I mean, in this room, it's probably well known, yeah? That the future will be fully renewable, and this is something where the technology is here today. Yeah? Just it needs awareness, and then this is why we're happy about any possibility that we have to explain what we are doing and how we want to proceed.
So maybe there are some new clients sitting here on a community level, who knows?
For sure.
Let me include Catherine again as the mayor of Malmö, because I know that you have a very, very ambitious goal. The city has an ambitious goal, 100% renewable energy by 2030. So not 2050, 2030. That's somewhat closer. Why give yourself such an ambitious goal, and what strategy do you have? Maybe we can pinch some ideas.
Well, I think, first of all, I would like to just tell you a little bit about Malmö. It's the third largest city in Sweden, with about 330,000 inhabitants, with roots almost all over the world, with 178 different nationalities being represented. So in one way, I think it's very obvious for everyone in our city that everything that happens around the world do affect our citizens and our city. And opposite, we are working quite hard to make sure that all our citizens realize that everything that we do also affects the rest of the world and the globe. And we used to be an industrial city, and we had to change on a very strategical way, and we have been working quite hard to develop the city through focus on sustainability. So I think we have ambitious goals when it comes to environment and sustainability as a whole, on a very holistic approach, and we're working hard with the SDGs, all the 17, because it affects us all. And I think that we can see that when we have had this focus, a very strategic focus, when we developed the city, it has been a way to make sure that we are a modern city, that the rest of the world actually come to our city and try to find sustainable solutions. And we have been working quite hard with NGOs, with different companies, with Cities International, and a broad collaboration. And I think that's an awareness that we have to do something new and try new technology and try to focus and encourage different innovative solutions. So it's part of our development. It's part of our strategic focus, actually. And I think if I give you one piece of example, we have a climate contract that is basically a contract that the municipality and the energy company Aon and our waste management company, we signed this contract. And basically it's a way to make sure that we are a fast-growing city. And when we develop new city districts, we make sure that we have the infrastructure in the beginning, from the very first day, to make sure that everyone that takes part of is a part of the development project are able to fulfill the goals of 100% renewables from the very first beginning. And then we work close with companies that are helping us out to find this kind of smart grids and measurements to make to help people to change their pattern and their way of living, actually. And I think we know for sure that it is in the cities we have to make the greatest effort, the biggest change. since I think it's about 75% of all the energy consumption in the world is within the cities. And I think it's an obligation for all mayors all over the world to try to get new solutions. And then I think it's also very important to see, as a mayor, that you have to make sure that you find new solutions and that you demand a different way of living, but you still have to create a society with a high standard of living. I mean, you can't force change if people feel that their life expectancy is reduced. You have to make livable cities. Meanwhile, you're focused on sustainable solutions.
And livable, of course, also means that the economy and the economic situation for the individuals there is still good. Yeah. You said that the city of Malmö went through a huge transformation from an industrial city, and you're moving towards something new. So how do you balance that?
But I think lots of people within the city can see that it's a way of being a modern city, to be relevant, since this kind of questions are just, the awareness about the questions are just raising. And I think the businesses that we are collaborating with, they are all aware that they have to force themselves and try to find new solutions, because that's business in the long run. So I think we have lots of different actors that see this is a win-win when we do it together.
That sounds optimistic. I'm sure you'll achieve that. I know that Scotland achieved a lot. It's already ahead of the goals it set itself. The original goal of cutting greenhouse gas emissions by 42% by 2020, and you already reached it 6 years ago.
Not quite.
No, you reached it now, but that is, hold on. But it's the year 2017, 2020, so 3 years ago. That makes it right.
Yeah, we are certainly moving quite far, quite fast. Now, we had climate change legislation in 2009, and that's the legislative basis on which we're working at the moment. But because of what's happened, because we have moved so far, we're planning on legislating again in 2018. And that legislation will bring our targets more in line with the Paris Agreement, and will be challenging. And, you know, as politicians, we always have an issue about, you know, persuading and being able to move people with you in that debate, because some of the things that you're asking them to think about and to do are challenging for them at almost every level. So we've tried to build in quite a lot of incentivization in order to achieve that. So
on what level?
Well, almost every level in reality. But for me, the most important bit is the things that we do at the community level. So we have you know, funded community and locally owned renewable energy projects to try and ensure that people understand that this is not something that is just about big companies, that can be done on quite a local scale. We have a climate challenge fund which reaches right down into very small groups and allows them to develop ideas that many of which will be about energy, not all, but some will be about transport, others will be about growing things. But we are putting money in at that level to allow people to begin to have the debate at that level, because if we don't make sure that people in their communities are understanding the need for this, our job will be so much harder. But I think we've done incredibly well. We're one of the countries that has managed to move very fast on renewables. So in terms of energy production, we've no more coal in Scotland. That's gone. So we shut down the last coal-fired power station a couple of years ago, so there is no more coal in Scotland. And that's big news, because don't forget, Scotland was, if not where the Industrial Revolution started, one of the places it did start from. So, you know, we have been industrialized for a very long time. Coal was enormous in Scotland. So to see that go is an enormous culture change for a lot of places. We've got enormous opportunities with wind and water. We're incredibly well placed for that. Believe it or not, we can sometimes do solar energy as well. Perhaps not quite as well as Uganda, but then maybe you can't do wind and water as well as us. So we all have to choose where our best efforts are going to be. And actually, our success in moving to renewables is now kind of basically just motoring itself, and we now have to switch our concern to a different challenge, which is heat and power.
So the
and
end-use
transport
sector.
Yeah. Because we've kind of, that's the renewables ball is well on the way, and so we now need to be thinking about the heat, power, transport side of things. So there we're going to challenge ourselves as well. Politicians are always a little bit nervous about setting the targets and challenging themselves, because the difficulty is you may fail, in which case there will be people lining up to tell you you've failed. But if you don't set ambitious targets, then you've no chance of ever reaching them. And the only way to do it is to just stretch yourself that bit further, which is what we did. And it's turned out to be successful, because some of our achievements, we've done them, you know, 4, 5, 6 years earlier than we thought we would. Just goes to show. It's not always failure to set ambitious targets.
Jean-Baptiste, as Scotland now embarks on tackling also heating and cooling of buildings, and also changing transportation, make it more run by renewable energy, do you have any tips?
Well, I don't know enough the Scottish market to give direct tips, but I mean, I think the concept of communities is very diverse and can be very diverse, yeah? And I think it should be suited for every market. At Sonnen, the energy community concept is at the heart of what we're doing. I could give you 3 examples of what could be communities. I think it could be, let's say, talking about Puerto Rico in America after the storm. When you rebuild the energy system, then you want to make sure that also on the physical infrastructure level, you are doing something decentral and efficient. Yeah? Could be one example. Another example where we are working on in the US, it's called the Mandalay Project, to create a new city. Yeah? And then if you embed the technology from scratch, then you can increase immensely the efficiency. And here you have everything. You have the power supply, you have the energy efficiency, you have the water supply, and of course you don't create cities every day, so it's only in a particular cases, but here you have a holistic approach, which is also very efficient. And you have in let's say in let's say countries where that have no energy direct issues, like Germany. I mean, it's more about creating a community of choice, and this is what we are creating. I can give you the example of Wilpolsried in Allgäu, where Sonnen is headquartered, where here you are, let's say, it's smaller than a village. We call it also a community, where you can be self-sufficient, yeah, with combining all the available technology. Yes, there is solar, but there are also other renewable energy sources. And I think we should not be too strict in the concept of communities. Yeah? I think it should be fitted for purpose, and there are different energy landscape. And I mean, the key is to reach, our goal is to have green and local energy supplies, driven by the prosumer, driven by households, consumers. Yeah.
Now, Claude, when you listen to those examples that we just hear from Malmö, Scotland, and also the small community in the Oberallgäu there, what role do you think the EU should be playing, or is it already perhaps interfering too much? Because we've heard several times in the course of today, certainly from the corporate level, saying, right, you know, don't meddle with our affairs, let us decide which technology works, which way to go forward. So what is your perception?
I think we have heard Governor Brown to say we need leadership. And we have here 3 people who say we need targets. So the policy making under this new ideology, which is called better regulation, I tell you, better regulation is the same ideological move than 20, 25 years ago, Reagan and Thatcher saying that if the rich have enough money, the trickling down and then society will flourish. A planet, one planet, 10 billion inhabitants, that needs rules. And even relatively detailed rules, because otherwise you will just trigger conflict. And where, and that is the link, Malmö has for sure a district heating system. If the EU legislation, which we will vote on the 28th of November, is not ambitious on renewables, what does that mean? That means that the state aid rules, which will be done in 1 year time after, could forbid Malmö to support green heat in its district heating system. So that is where the link is between the local level and the European level. So Europe needs ambitious targets so that we can transform the system into the right directive. I'm trying now, or we are trying to bring the Scottish model onshore wind. For onshore wind, you need acceptance from the locals. So onshore wind, if it is a story from somebody flying from outside, putting a big machine in your garden, that doesn't fly. So you need these. So we are trying now to build into the Renewable Energy Directive the concept of local energy communities. But I can tell you, we still need some of your support to get it really done. I want Europe not only to lead on technology, but it's also about leading in this energy transition is a social revolution in the sense that we need, like Governor Brown said, we need to bring all kinds of people together, from businesses, from policy making, from the labs, the people who develop the next generation of solar, but also in society. For example, we try now also to enshrine a very strong policy at the European level for energy poverty, because part of the conflicts comes from poor people then not having really the right tools, or we are not providing them with the right tools to advance. So, and for you, or the link with, what is the link with Africa? We have, with the French former Energy Minister Borloo, we have now got President Juncker to help us to get a 3.5 billion de-risking fund for renewable energy in Europe. Now, on the way between now and Mr. Macron, the President of France, organizing 12th of December, a big summit, there is, what is still not clear, will we have a European instrument for this de-risking, and then we will have a German instrument for de-risking, we will have a French instrument for de-risking. I'm pretty sure Sweden is also, so what I want is also a Europe which works together, so that the companies from Europe, and also when we talk to Africa, that it is all us collectively.
In one voice. In one
voice that we move together. And for that, we need much more exchange in a certain level between progressive companies, progressive leaders in Africa, progressive regional leaders. And by the way, your party is sitting with my party in the parliament, so I know your SNP party very well, so you help us a lot, and with the local level. So that is how we bring things together.
Let me just, as the final question before I briefly look again through the room, if there is one or two here from the floor. So what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, that it is the correct kind of leadership that is required, and communication and cooperation in order to get this off the ground in time. And I remember earlier today, Bertrand Piccard said, everybody who agrees here on how important renewable energy is and that it has to be happen basically yesterday rather than today, don't talk to those who are not yet convinced in terms of environmental issues and that it's important, but give them facts and figures, economic facts and figures. Talk to them like business people. So perhaps from our mayors or from the cabinet secretary or Godfrey from your side, I mean, is there one economic super duper advantage that you can share with others to say this is so much better economically now, or business is thriving because of that, or even was developed because of that?
We have 60,000 low-carbon jobs in Scotland that have been created over this last period. That's actually what you need to turn around and say. And what we're trying to do at government level is constantly make the links between the two. I think it's right. I mean, for a long time, if you talked environment or anything like that, people saw that as meaning that there was going to be an economic hit and job losses. And the proof, well, this is a very English idiom, English language idiom, you know.
Yes, be very clear in this day and age.
Because you know, the proof is in the doing. But you know, there is no better thing to be able to do than to simply point to actual success. And you know, for us, we can actually point to tens of thousands of jobs. Now, we're not a big country. It's only a country of 5 million people. So 60,000 jobs is actually quite a lot of jobs for us. So, you know, that is an important thing. And by the way, we're doing it right through all our sectors. I mean, I'm also responsible for waste, and we are pushing very hard the circular economy. We've embedded it in the manufacturing strategy so that we're not seeing the things as separate. They're being brought together in terms of the economy. And I think that's where, and that's beginning to really motor now as well. And that's, I think, how you make, it clicks when you begin to talk like that. I just want to pick up on something that Claude said. I think it's really important that we make sure everything we do doesn't leave people behind. It is enormously important, particularly in Northern Europe, that we think about energy efficiency, that we think about fuel poverty, that we consider how we make this transition so that it doesn't impact negatively on jobs. Because if we don't take those actions, we will lose people in the debate. We will begin to have people react negatively in terms of the debate. So all of that's got to work together. You really need to be able to do it coherently for it to work together. You can't do it a bit here and a bit there. It's got to join up. And I think that can sometimes be the hardest thing for governments to do, join things up.
Godfrey, you mentioned how you, within 5 years, completely relaunched energy access in Kasese. Did the people go along with it right from the start? How did you convince them?
Yeah, people went with it right from the start because there was that cultural motivation. But now it has turned business. Because our company itself is already making profits. And it has won concessions in 3 other districts. So it's now a huge company distributing power to the rural areas of 3 districts. And we are making a lot of money. We are even started getting dividends. Last year they gave me $120 dividends, and I plowed it back, bought more shares instead. In the villages, because we are an agricultural area, agro-processing industries have started adding value to agricultural products, coffee, maize, and the like. And people now are demanding for power. We are no longer convincing them. They have seen the importance of electricity, and then there are so many growth centers which are now coming up in the mountains, and everything is now perfect. So it has brought it's now making a lot of economic sense. It's now not a cultural motivation. Now people need power to do business. And it has opened up the rural areas. Even me in the big municipality now, the pressure of people coming from the rural areas to the municipality is lessening because there is electricity there. So I've seen it as a catalyst of economic development. And people are making money and they are very happy. So I can't convince them now. Instead, they look for me. And what I've done, because I worked in a corporate organization, I just brought that businesses in politics.
Okay.
And so many young people are following me up. And when I go, there will be sustainability.
There may be, Catherine, just because we did talk about the transition already from an industrial city to one that is modern with startups, embracing in renewables. Do you have one particular example in terms of a positive business impact this move has?
I think the energy company, part of our climate contract, they always state that they have been forced to find new solutions that has given them an advantage on the global market. And then we have, and that's climate contract is when we develop new city areas. But then we have like real estate or property owners in already existing areas that are working hard to refurb and make sure that that they work with energy efficiency. And they have found solutions that make it more profitable for them as well. So I think you can see it in different perspective, that you have to make profit out of it. And in that case, with the property owners working very specific with energy efficiency, they also realized that when they were working with the energy efficiency, they may reduce the cost for the residents, and they also made the profit out of the situation where the resident moved less. So they stayed longer in his properties. So the main part was from people just staying in the area, and you had like a social development of the area.
So this transition is linked with good, positive experience, which is also a very interesting business model for sure.
I think it's important to see, and that's why I like the SDGs. The Agenda 2030 so much, because it's the first time you have this really holistic approach to all the sustainability perspectives. So when you refurb and when you work with energy efficiency, if you involve the people in your flats, in your properties, you also create a better, more sustainable district. And I think you can see it in lots of different ways, that if you work very holistic with an ambition to make sustainable cities in all perspectives, it's much easier to deliver on each.
Time is almost up, and I want to give the last word to Claude, because I interrupted him so rudely at the beginning, but there was a reason for it. Is anyone here burning with a question? Because now would be the moment. Yes, there is a lady, hand up, and the microphone is already right next to you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Gilda Munjan. I came from Mozambique. I'm an entrepreneur, and I sell solar energy in the rural areas. So I train other women to do the same job. I'm really happy to be here in this room. I came not for COP, I came for Green Innovation Workshop, which was a pre-COP seminar that took place last week. And I stayed extra for the COP. So my question is it's not really a question, but it's something which I would like to share. We as entrepreneurs, I will try to keep short. We as entrepreneurs, we are really worried with our government, especially in Africa. I'm wondering, how is Uganda doing this? In my country, we lack incentives. So sometimes it's difficult if you don't have government incentives. How can you bring your solar kits to Africa without incentives? Because when I bring my material to Mozambique to sell, I pay almost 50% of tax. How can you then take this 50% tax for the last beneficiaries, which are poor rural people? They deserve clean energy. So if we talk energy transition, for this to be perfect, we also need to have flexible policy framework. And we also have to put under this political framework the sharing of risks. So our governments need to share risks with the investors so that they can be attracted to come to our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any comments on that?
Yeah, even our government doesn't have incentives. But I think that's what I am mobilizing politicians to ask for. However, you can make it a bit cheaper for the community, because what we have, there are grants which can also become what? Incentives. For instance, the European Union now has a grant, and we are pushing for it with WWF. They will give a revolving fund where people will buy, who have even identified community-based organizations and cooperative societies. They are going to supply 17,000 solar panels. And then they give them out to people to pay in installments at no interest at all. So those are incentives, so that someone in a month will be able to pay the equivalent of the amount of money he spends on kerosene, so that it becomes a bit flexible for that poor person to pay. You can even take 1 year to pay for a solar panel. Those are also incentives. But also we are pushing our government to reduce on taxation and on mainly solar panels. But we are also pushing it to strengthen standards, because we are also getting a problem of poor quality technology. And it is actually demotivating our efforts. Sure. Because you cannot take a solar panel to a village woman and in 1 week it has already collapsed. He thinks really you have duped him. So all those are, but Mozambique, you can go for grants to make acquiring a solar panel a bit flexible. But meanwhile, we should combine efforts as Africans. Even here, we should meet as Africans and go back and tell our presidents that the way to go is renewable energy. That's what we need to do.
Jean-Baptiste, you gave me a look.
I mean, if I may add, I mean, not talking about the African context, but more on, so today the economics of green and decentralized energy supplies are there. Just the system in a lot of countries has not been developed for that. It's still relying on maybe an older framework. Okay? And I think this, it's not about discussing whether it's economic or not. Yeah, it is. Yeah? It was to do windmills, PV panels, and also storage. Yeah? It's about having and it can be different according to the different countries, but also the regulatory framework needs to be updated, so to say.
All right. With an eye on the clock, I would like to thank everybody on the panel except Claude. There's a very good reason for that, of course. And I wish Scotland best of luck with its future initiatives, especially on the community level there. Malmö, best of luck, of course. Sun and e-service, may you grow and spread. And Godfrey, well done in Kasese, and keep on going and spreading the good word and the good deeds. Thank you so much for being here on the panel and sharing your experience with us. Thank you. Now then, Claude, I stopped him very early on when he was about to share with us a lot of things that the European Union is doing or not doing, and that you also have some slides. And I think it's better for you to do that on your own. Tell us perhaps a little bit about the Clean Energy Pact, what it does and what it doesn't do. And hopefully also tie it in with the question of how this will help the energy transformation from the bottom up.
I will be very short because you promised us a cocktail or not? Huh? So do I have...
Now that's an incentive, isn't it? Here we are.
Where do I push? So what is important to understand is, with Paris we have a new currency. This currency is gigatons of CO2, which we are allowed to emit between now and 2050. And so just shortly, on the left column, you see what ICCP has already presented in 2014, which means if we are to stay below 2 degrees or at 1.5, the world cannot get more than 690 or 890 gigatons. Then, of course, you can have a whole political discussion about what is the fair share of Europe. I will spare you that, but what is clear, Europe cannot emit between 2015 and 2050 more than something which is between 47 and 61. And so we have run the first well below 2 degree scenario for energy, transport, agriculture, industry with Öko Institute for Europe. And what does that show? That shows the following. If you have a carbon budget approach, so if you take Paris serious, you need to follow the green line. You need to go from 215 to 250 in a relatively continuous steep way. Or otherwise, what happens is what risks to happen now. We have targets which have been proposed by heads of states in October 2014, so it was before December 2015. These targets are 40% greenhouse gas, 27% energy efficiency, 20% only renewables. If we stay with that, what will happen is that in the next decade, Europe will overshoot massively its CO2 emissions, and in such a way that then we would have to go to zero between 2030 and 2040, which everybody knows this is impossible. So the reality of the European Union today is we are not on Paris, and if we don't win a vote on the 28th of November in the Parliament to go to at least 35 renewables, 35 efficiency, Europe will never, never, never again be able to contribute its fair share to a well below 2 degree scenario. That is the reality. And that's also the reason why Commission is digging below the table when the question comes from journalists or from... So they are not on track, and they don't dare to challenge the heads of states. And there is hope also in Europe. We have discussed today a lot about decentralized, and I believe in this decentralized revolution. But there is a second revolution, which is this one. Artificial energy islands in the North Sea. We know the technology. This is done in Abu Dhabi, where we will meet is an artificial island built by a Dutch company. And in in Dubai, so we can build artificial islands in the North Sea with 6, 8, 10 gigawatt of cheap offshore wind around, because the maintenance cost is 30% of offshore wind, which means you have a harbor, you have a landing line, you can have your maintenance team on the island. And this project, which is a real project now between Netherlands and UK, the Dutch TenneT grid operator, the Danish grid operator, and GasUnie, which is a gas company from Netherlands. And you don't see it, but below that sea, you have old gas bubbles. So you can produce, in moments where you don't need the electricity, or where not all of that, you can produce through hydrogen gas. And what we need for Europe is a greening the gas strategy. And by the way, I think the Engie company is also leading on that. And then your question was, of course we have to speak to each and everybody in society. But frankly, my experience from policy making is also sometimes you have also to call the bluff. And calling the bluff is what happens this Wednesday in Europe. So you have, for those who are less knowledgeable in European policy, from left to right. So left is the chief lobbyist of the German car industry, very close to Mrs. Merkel, former minister in a CDU government. He flew in 2 weeks ago to Brussels to meet Mr. Selmayr, who is the chief staff for Mr. Juncker, who is the third person. And these two, in a meeting, agreed to lower the ambition. And therefore, I propose that Mr. Cañete, when he comes tomorrow, he has a cap with make diesel great again. Because that is what the European Union has decided. This is, not only from an environmental point of view, very dangerous, also from an industrial point of view. And did you understand the subversive comment of the chief of DHL Post this morning, when he said, Deutschland ist ein Entwicklungsland when it comes to electric cars? Because he had Deutsche Post, can you imagine, in Germany, Deutsche Post had to create a startup to have somebody to produce an electric car. So as if Germany is a developing country when it comes to car development. But that shows you that also sometimes in politics you have to be very outspoken on who is blocking. The e-mobility is, the citizens embrace it, the cities embrace it. We have a powerful lobby who is blocking it for the moment. And I'm not on make diesel great again. I'm on make Europe and make the planet great again together. And Bertrand this morning said it. What is the future of Europe? Is replacing old diesel by electromobility, replacing old efficient buildings by new buildings, replacing old coal power plants by new renewables. I think that is what we need in Europe, and then Europe can make again a great contribution to the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claude. Thank you, Claude. You prefer it up here? You can sit down there, then it's easier for you to witness the closing, but thank you so much for this final speech, which fits very nicely into everything I heard here today, because we are slowly but surely reaching the end of Renewable Energy Day. But before I hand over to the Director General, Adnan Amin, I would just like to thank you all for being here today, and I would like to thank the organizers for having me here today. I said right at the beginning of the day that I'm a business anchor for a TV station, international broadcaster DW. And presenting TV news on a daily basis has a very special characteristic, because news means bad news. You hardly ever tell the world anything good. It's bad news. And at the end of the week, you're very depressed. And towards the end of the last week, obviously with COP23, we were covering an awful lot of climate change topics, also in connection with business news. And what we were concentrating on in news, not just my station, most news is doing the same, we were concentrating on everything that does not yet work. Certainly everything that does not live up to the Paris Climate Agreement. So we were concentrating our reports on glacier melting in Alaska, or the ice caps melting and polar bears being at risk now of extinction, floods, obviously, all the weather turbulences with floods in Bangladesh and India, and drought elsewhere. So it's very, very depressing. And at the end of such a news week, you go home and you think, okay, this is it. The world cannot be saved. And so I'm very grateful that I was here today and listened to all these fantastic speakers up here, because there is hope. And so thank you very much for giving me hope. And with that, I would like to hand over to Adnan.
Been a big follower of Deutsche Welle, but from now on I will, if you are the anchor. But you summed it up, which is, I've worked in climate and environment 25 years. And it was at Copenhagen when I realized I needed to do something else before I went insane, because the whole thing was so pessimistic. We couldn't have a political agreement. Every few months we have a new scientific report showing us we're going to help. And somewhere we needed good news. So this room, the remarkable thing that has happened today in this room is that we have the good news. We have the people who understand how energy transition is going to happen, who understand how transformation is going to work, who, from different perspectives, we had a guy, I called him the Kingsmill Bond of renewable energy, from one of the top financial analysts. I can see you, Kingsmill. Top financial analyst companies in the City of London, who tells us that oil is going to plateau and change is going to be disruptive and it's going to be rapid, but it's going to provide opportunities. We have policymakers from Germany talking about the Energiewende, which is beginning to look less optimistic than what China is doing. We had the head of the state grid. He has a few customers, 1.1 billion, which he's serving. And the guy is looking at revolutionizing the electric system in China. And one of the top guys talking about digitalization, data, the Internet of Things coming from China. So we are moving from a narrative of disempowerment through pessimism to a narrative of empowerment through opportunity. And all of the people who have been in this room are participants in this amazing exercise that we're seeing unfolding with us today. We had Jerry Brown talking to us. What a remarkable man, a man who has dedicated his career to such positive energy, and whenever he walks into a room, he brings that energy with him. We've had people from the private sector who are innovating new ways. We had, who believed until today, and this is why I asked my friend Alexei to come here. Did anybody in this room believe that some of the cutting-edge research on the future of photovoltaic is happening in the Moscow State University? Put your hand up if you believe that. Don't lie. Well, maybe you know. And there you have it. I mean, these are all things that are so counterintuitive to the normal narrative that we hear about the world and how it is changing, that this is where the real change and the disruption is coming. You had a company like Engie, which is a conventional company a couple of years ago. And when you hear Thierry, you think, is this guy a revolutionary? No, he's mainstream now. Thierry is mainstream in Engie. So this kind of extraordinary change is happening so quickly, but it's also happening in developing countries. And I convened a meeting of African energy ministers very early on. And I told them, okay, I was in the UN, and I'm not going to do that thing of we are in a disaster situation, we need more development aid, we need more help, we need a grant. I said, we have all the resources in Africa. We have the best geothermal, the best solar, the best wind, the best biomass, the best hydro. Why are we always talking as if we are completely disempowered? Let's use our ingenuity, because investors will come to the table if we have the plan of what we want to do. So I think, what I saw in this room has been so inspiring for me that it's vindicated all those long airplane trips I've had to take and long hours in the office and listening to people I really don't want to listen to. All of this has been vindicated, but what I heard in this room. And look at the tremendous energy. So I want to ask the people who are on the panel today who gave us such, I don't know, where's the mayor of Kasese? I hope he has not left. Godfrey, come up. Godfrey made only one mistake today. He's done everything perfectly. But he said the Ruwenzori is the second highest mountain. It's not. Mount Kenya is the second highest. But everything else, what you've been able to achieve has been extraordinary. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you on behalf even of your constituents for what you have been able to do, and you've created a dynamic model for the future. Claude, come. Want to see you one more time. I don't want to see you together with Kanyete because I don't know how you'll react to the hat.
Of course, but he at least understands it, contrary to some other people in Commission.
But I want to pay tribute to you for the spirit you have always shown. From the moment I have known you, you have been that relentless warrior, knowing that we're going in the right direction and pushing for action. Thank you for that. Thierry, why don't you come up? And Thierry is one of those thinkers, who's been making all of this happen in Engie. I've seen him in different parts of the world, consistently stretching your imagination. Alexei Tarasov, met this young Russian scientist, and the kind of stuff he's doing is just mind-blowing. When you look at what is happening in the world of renewable energy, you don't think about Russia, but you realize when I got to know them, how amazing all of this has been. So thank you very much. Who else do we still have here from the panel? So, Sonen, I'm on the jury of the Zayed Prize, and we gave you a prize, so you know what I think about you. Come up and join us. The mayor of Malmö. I want to tell you something. About in the year 1999, I was a young, very dynamic person working in the UN Environment Program, and we met in Malmö at the first ever Global Ministerial Environment Forum, and I drafted the Malmö Declaration. I'll never forget it. It was January, it was very cold. But the Malmo Declaration started with a phrase that said, please come up, that said, we have in our hands at the dawn of this new century the means to make a better world for the future. Well, I'm not sure if it was true then, but it's true now. And the kind of things that you are doing now are remarkable, and thank you very much. Sebastian Kind is still here? Sebastian, come, Sebastian. I want to introduce you to one of my new best friends, Sebastian Kind. It's extraordinary. We met and we immediately clicked. And Sebastian, you have been amazing that in the few months of the administration, you have been able to create a framework for change in Argentina that is pointing the way to a future that nobody would have imagined 2 years ago. Thank you for what you've done, and I think what you provide is also a model for so many others. So I want to thank all of you guys. Is anybody left here from who was on one of the... Kingsmill Bond is... this is the problem with the English. They pretend to be very humble and not... They're actually waiting for you to specially recognize them so they can come up. I know you. I went to school in your country, so I understand fully. But Kingsmill, thank you very much for taking the time, because I think the message you started with is a message that we all need to take away from here, is that this change is coming. This change is going to be rapid. This change brings with it risks, but it also brings a wealth of opportunities for the future. But what it also brings is a promise for a better tomorrow for the bulk of the people in the world. So thank you also for taking. So ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful day. And we promised you a cocktail, so we're going to have a cocktail party outside. Please enjoy it. We're not in Abu Dhabi, so I think hopefully serving wine also. Very good. And please enjoy the evening, continue the discussions, and join me in thanking all of those who took part today, including the ones who are not here. Thank you. Yeah.
Lustig.